Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Angel Sawyer. Milton Sawyer was born in 1963 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he lived his entire life. He grew up as an average child, playing in the woods and building huts. But he had a strong passion for collecting valuable and rare items, a trait he inherited from his father. This love for collecting eventually led him to open an antique store as an adult. Known as a treasure hunter, he bought and resold jewelry and other items, help him have an affluent life. He has a knack for finding rare treasures. However, Milton's personal life was not so smooth. He married in 2000 and had 3 children, but his relationship with his wife did not last. They eventually divorced. After the divorce, he devoted all his love to his children. He often took them out everywhere, both at work and in his free time. He is known to everyone as a father who deeply loves his children. For many years he was single and had little interest in dating, until 2011, when he met Angel Kiesinger, a 28-year-old woman, while dropping his child off at school. They struck up a conversation, though at that time, Angel was married and had 4 children. Angel reassured Milton that she was in the process of divorcing her husband, although he was 10 years older than her, but they remained bonded by their shared experiences of raising multiple children and failed marriages. Milton had already settled his custody issues, with their children living alternately with him and their mother, while Angel was just beginning to arrange shared custody. After their first meeting, they started to develop a close relationship. By 2012, they were married. Angel quickly became interested in Milton's business, and when she first visited his antique shop, she noticed that the shelves were quite messy. She cleverly rearranged the items in the store. Milton loved it. He noticed that the shop looked better and sales increased after rearrangement. However, the family's main job was not just to arrange the shelves of the antique shop. This family has 7 children, and they need to find a way to get along with all of them. They had been doing well until August 2, 2018, when a mysterious attacker takes the life of Milton, the city's most famous antique collector. At 2 a.m., Angel knocked on her neighbor's door, visibly shaken. She told her neighbor that an intruder had broken into her home and killed her husband, Milton. She was still tied up and unable to call for help herself. The neighbor immediately contacted emergency services by dialing 911. She informed the dispatcher that Angel was crying and claimed that Milton had been murdered. There was blood on Angel's face, and she mentioned that the attacker had a gun. She also said that the intruder was trying to steal money and jewelry, but Angel managed to escape. While waiting for the police to arrive, the neighbor stayed with Angel. When law enforcement officers reached the scene, they found the front door locked, but noticed that the back door was open. They entered through the back and proceeded to the bedroom, where Angel said that the injured Milton. Inside, the room was in complete disarray. The contents of the cabinets were strewn across the floor, and a significant amount of gold and silver jewelry was scattered everywhere. The chaos made it difficult for the police officer who arrived on the scene to locate Milton right away. It took some time to find Milton, who was discovered in the bathroom. He was a large man, taking up most of the floor space, and showed no signs of life. Doctors declared him dead. However, after further investigation, the police could not determine what had caused his death. Milton's hands were bound with tape behind his back, and he was lying face down in a small pool of blood. Police quickly realized that there was very little blood present, so he could not have been seriously injured. Only minor wounds were found on his body, which were not life-threatening. To uncover the cause of Milton's death, a detailed examination of his body and the crime scene was necessary. Meanwhile, Angel was taken to a medical facility for care, with the police staying with her for protection, as it was feared that the attacker might return. Milton's family was informed of the incident at around 3 o'clock in the morning. They were shocked by the news and could not believe that Milton, who was always friendly, could have had enemies. At the crime scene, police discovered signs of a robbery. All the furniture drawers were pulled out, and items were scattered on the floor. Milton showed no head injuries, and there was no shell casing found. Posture of the body showed signs of a struggle, and in such a situation, an attacker would have left behind DNA. Forensic experts were on the lookout for any evidence, including fingerprints. After conducting an autopsy, forensic experts concluded that Milton likely died from asphyxiation. The position of the body, with his hands tied behind his back and pressure from a hard surface under his chest, made breathing difficult. If he had been unconscious, the position could have been fatal. During the investigation, police questioned neighbors, but were unable to gather any significant information. Locals had only heard a loud noise and then silence. Detectives found no physical evidence at the scene. They found that there was a key in the back door lock, which was odd because keys would normally be kept in a safe place. However, Angel stated she had left the key outside on the porch so her children could use it if she returned home late. It was possible that the criminal had found the key and used it. Detectives collected the key as evidence, as it might contain the killer's fingerprints. Angel sustained a minor injury to the right side of her forehead, which was not life-threatening. She explained that on the night of the incident, only she and Milton were at home, while their 2 children were staying with friends. Around midnight, she went to the kitchen for a snack. When she opened the bedroom door, she saw a man dressed in black standing in the hallway. He approached her and demanded to know where the valuable jewelry was, claiming he was aware of the large amount stored in the house. She believed this was a targeted attack, as her husband Milton was known as the city's leading gold jewelry dealer. After taking the valuables, the robber struck she on the head, leaving her stunned. She fell, confused and unsure of what to do. Then, he took advantage of her state, binding her hands and feet with tape. A few hours went by, but Milton still hadn't emerged from the bathroom. She couldn't see what was happening with him. After a while, she decided to loosen the tape to free herself and stand up. She immediately ran to a neighbor's house for help. She also shared with the detectives about a suspicious person. Around 7 p.m. that night, they met a young man who wanted to sell a TV. However, Milton, the experienced antique dealer, suspected that the TV was stolen and refused to buy it. The young man was displeased and left, possibly holding a grudge against Milton. Angel recognized the young man. His name was Dylan. He had come with his girlfriend, and Milton had previously conducted business with him multiple times. She suspected that Dylan and his girlfriend was involved in drug use. She provided a detailed description of them. However, as detectives searched for Dylan and his girlfriend, they noticed several unusual aspects of the case. They checked the recordings from surveillance cameras near the house and found no suspicious people visiting the family. Strangely, a significant amount of money and jewelry remained untouched, not even the obvious items. This behavior is unusual for a robbery. Typically, thieves take everything they can find, especially if they know the victims have valuable items. The selective theft suggested that either no strangers had entered the house, or the motive behind the crime was not merely financial gain. The suspects, Dylan and his girlfriend, were arrested and charged with trafficking in illegal substances. During questioning, detectives put pressure on them and turned to talking about the attack involving Milton. But they did not understand what was being discussed. It seemed they were genuinely surprised. They were then told directly that they were suspected of killing Milton, but they provided an alibi about selling TVs. They confirmed that they had met him in the evening. However, this did not connect them with the subsequent tragic incident. According to them, they sold the TV to someone else. He even immediately provided his mobile phone so that the police could verify his words. After checking the geolocation of the cell phone, investigators confirmed that Dylan and his girlfriend were indeed in a different area at the time of the attack. At around midnight, they were too far from the crime scene, and this confirmed their alibi. Thanks to this, all suspicions against them were removed. The detectives returned to the very beginning of the investigation. They were unable to guess who had attacked Milton. However, the next day, they received new information from the forensic expert. The expert carefully reviewed the case, consulted with colleagues, and came to the conclusion that his initial assumption on positional asphyxia was incorrect. Milton could not have suffocated under his own weight. It was clear he had been intentionally strangled. A fractured ribcage found during the investigation supported the forensic expert's theories. However, this evidence does not match Angel's testimony, raising many questions and doubts. The police thoroughly investigated Angel and Milton's marriage, discovered that it was not as perfect as it appeared. Conversations with Angel's friends and family did not support these suspicions. They described the couple as having a long and seemingly happy marriage. No one believed that Angel could have had a motive for the attack. However, some of Milton's relatives described Angel as a very selfish woman. She was attractive and charismatic, but she always viewed herself as superior to others. This attitude attracted Milton because he really likes her confidence. He was willing to give her expensive jewelry from his antique shop, buy her cars, and always cater to her every whim. Milton's brother, David, informed detectives that after 5 years of marriage, their demands began to escalate. Angel increasingly shows no appreciation for the gifts and luxuries Milton gives her. Milton feels confused and has talked to David many times about the possibility that his wife, Angel, is unfaithful. In late 2017, suspicions arose when Angel was involved in an accident. Although she sustained only minor injuries, she was diagnosed with pain in her shoulders and hips. She went to a local physical therapy clinic, where a 38-year-old doctor, Isaac Melcher, prescribed her daily exercises. Initially, she attended her appointments in regular clothes, but after a few sessions, her behavior changed dramatically. She started to take great care in her appearance, showering thoroughly before each visit, wearing expensive perfume, dressing in her best outfits, and put on makeup. This change makes her husband, Milton, suspect that she is preparing for a date with Isaac. He attempted to confront Angel about her unusual behavior, but she consistently denied any wrongdoing, insisting that she always dressed nicely because she wanted to look her best in all situations. Milton's suspicions continued to intensify. He became more sensitive to family issues, partly because he was religious. He is a good and trustworthy man, always honest with his wife. Therapy doctor Isaac seems to be the same. Isaac attended church regularly and was a wonderful husband and father of 3. Those who knew him acknowledged this. When police approached Isaac to talk about new details in the case, he revealed that Milton had been visiting the hospital frequently and had had many arguments with him involving Angel. Milton was an extremely jealous husband who often raised his voice during phone calls. Although Isaac denied having an affair with Angel, but the police still asked him to provide his cell phone for their investigation. However, he told them an unbelievable story. His phone fell into the water right before the robber broke into Milton's house, so he was forced to throw it away. After the murder, Isaac went to Walmart and bought a new cell phone. This action made detectives suspicious, as they did not think it was a coincidence. Isaac is believed to have had an affair with Angel and then purchased a new phone shortly after Milton's death. Detectives suspect that the missing phone may contain vital evidence linking Isaac to the murder. Furthermore, the loss of the phone would make it difficult to determine his whereabouts at the time of the incident. Isaac likely didn't realize that the police could have verified their assumptions by checking Angel's mobile phone. When she was taken in for questioning, she stated that her husband Milton was very jealous. She always dresses gorgeously and used jewelry to highlight her beauty, which attracted the attention of many men. However, she insisted that Milton overreacted and insisted that she did nothing excessive. She also denied any involvement in the crime. After questioning, the officers had no grounds to keep her in custody, so she was released. investigators checked Isaac's alibi, which stated that he was at Walmart at the time of the murder to purchase a new cell phone. However, they obtained CCTV footage of the store and learned that he was not featured in it. Additionally, there was no receipt to confirm his purchase. At this point, investigators believed they had enough reason to search Isaac's house. They obtained a search warrant on August 8 and found his wife at home. She informed them that he had moved out of state and that she did not know of his relationship with Angel. Moreover, she could not confirm where he was on the night of the murder. She knew he was not home, but could not specify if he had gone to the store. Isaac's wife mentioned that he had traveled to visit his mother, which raised further concerns. This led to speculation that he might have sensed trouble and fled. Although he was not present, the police began searching his home, but found no useful information or evidence. They then reached out to Angel to find out where Isaac might be. She informed investigators that Isaac had reached out to her through social media. She said he was just asking about her, which prompted them to ask for her cell phone to check. She appeared reluctant to comply, which raised further concerns. If she was willing to discuss her communication with Isaac, why was she hesitant to share the details? Detectives checked her phone and immediately found a conversation between her and him. However, the name used there was Dustin, which detectives recognized as Isaac's middle name. In the messages, he referred to Angel as his beloved, indicating a romantic relationship between them. The police returned the phone to Angel, and at that exact moment, she received a new message. She refused to disclose its contents, right in front of the officers, deleted it. Any suspicion of her involvement in the crime has now become clearer. The focus turned to understanding and proving her role in the attack. To investigate further, detectives seized her phone. 10 days into the investigation, police received crucial evidence from a man named Lewis, who called the department and identified himself as Isaac's mentor. Lewis explained that from the first time Angel came to see Isaac, she showed interest in he and it seemed like she was flirting with he. Lewis said Isaac rejected her flirting words for a long time because it was against the rules. However, one day he entered the treatment room to find her completely naked, and he could not resist her. Then, they began a romantic relationship in the months leading up to Milton's murder. She told he that her husband, Milton, would never allow them to be together, portraying Milton as jealous and controlling. Isaac felt compelled to save her. Together, they devised a plan to eliminate her abusive husband, Milton. They agreed to stage a home invasion, with Isaac using a key that Angel had placed by the door. During the attack, they intended to be in the bedroom. Late at night, around midnight, Isaac broke into house carrying a gun. He entered the bedroom and attacked Milton, strangling until Milton stopped resisting. During this chaos, Angel tried to intervene, but accidentally hit her head on the nightstand, which was an unforeseen incident but helped in making the attack appear real. Isaac then staged the crime scene to look like a robbery by throwing items on the floor and filling a pillowcase with jewelry before making his escape. He planned to remove any DNA evidence related to Milton from his body, and Angel had a similar plan. Before the police arrived, Isaac disposed of all evidence from the attack in garbage cans scattered around the city and disposed of his phone. This information came from a police informant named Lewis, which needed verification. The investigators convinced Lewis to record a phone call with Isaac to gather evidence of his confession. Over 3 phone calls, they confirmed that Isaac had an affair with Angel and was responsible for the attack. The police arrested 38-year-old Isaac Dustin Melcher at his home in North Carolina. He was taken to the station for questioning, but refused to cooperate. Consequently, the detectives turned their attention to 45-year-old Angel. They informed her that they had arrested Milton's killer and asked her to come to the station to identify him. Upon her arrival, she was also detained and taken in for questioning. Angel finally admitted that she knew about Isaac's plan. He wants to get rid of her husband, Milton, who is destroying their relationship. However, she said that she tried to stop him. He began to behave aggressively, making she worry about the safety of herself and her children. Therefore, she decided not to intervene in the murder. The police discovered that it was all a lie and that the two had planned the crime together. In fact, she was the manipulator, inciting the attack. She sees herself as a victim, while Milton is seen as a cruel tyrant. Therefore, she tries to arouse pity and noble feelings in Isaac. In the end, he accepts the role of a knight, rescuing her from captivity. Isaac is intelligent and rational, but love blinds him. However, the prosecutor's office was in trouble because much of the evidence against Angel was circumstantial. During questioning, she labeled Isaac a crazed stalker and that she wanted nothing to do with him. Detectives informed Isaac of her true nature, prompting him to realize he was being used. Furious, he decided to testify against Angel in exchange for a plea deal. Isaac pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. However, the most important condition of the deal was that he promised to testify against Angel. During Angel's trial in September 2021, the prosecutor's office argued that she was not motivated by financial motives because she and Milton did not have a life insurance policy. Additionally, the house they lived in was Milton's property and had been purchased before they were married, meaning it would not be divided or given to her in the event of his death. During her conversations with investigators, Angel revealed that she felt trapped in a loveless marriage. The prosecutor claimed that Angel did not want to be known as a twice-divorced woman and believed that killing Milton would be the better option. On September 16, 2021, Isaac testified against Angel. He claims that she first made him fall in love with her. Then she took advantage of his sympathy and made him hate Milton by telling him about the abuse she suffered. Under her manipulation, he is willing to do anything to save her from suffering, but in reality, he is just a pawn in her hands. Although Angel did not testify during the trial, but she maintained her innocence throughout. However, Isaac's testimony ultimately sealed her fate. All 12 jurors found Angel Sawyer guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Milton's antique shop never found a new owner and eventually closed. Currently, both Angel and Isaac remain in prison. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Teresa Parker. Teresa Parker was born on September 9, 1965, to Claire and William. The family initially lived in San Diego, California. They later moved to a home in Lafayette, Georgia, where they settled permanently. Teresa had 5 siblings. She was the middle child. Her friendly and kind nature made her popular with all her relatives. In 1984, Teresa graduated from high school. Soon after, she married her first love. After a while, the couple separated in the early 90s. Teresa completed her training and became a switchboard operator for the city police department, quickly becoming a favorite of the police officers. One of those who loved her was Sam Park, born in 1956 in Lafayette. He had an older sister named Caroline and a younger brother named Kenneth. Sam had a close relationship with his father. Overall, he was a kind and intelligent person. In his spare time, he enjoyed exploring the outskirts of the city, hunting and fishing in the many freshwater bodies nearby. When Sam turned 18, he joined the military and later became a police officer. In the early 1980s, his younger brother Kenneth admired him and chose a similar career, serving in the Marine Corps before joining the police department. Inspired by Sam, Kenneth decided to go to law school. For Sam, becoming a police officer was a lifelong dream. During his career, he once saved a child from a burning building. When Teresa, a beautiful 20-year-old new switchboard operator, joined the police department, she caught the attention of many of the officers, including Sam. They quickly became friends, and before long, Sam asked her out. Their relationship blossomed and they became a couple. However, some of Teresa's relatives noticed that Sam sometimes had difficulty controlling his jokes and could easily get angry. Both Teresa and Sam had experienced failed relationships in the past. Teresa had been married once, while Sam had been married twice. He saw his new relationship with Teresa as an opportunity to start over. The couple married on September 11, 1993. Teresa, 28, married Sam Parker, 37, who had just been promoted to city police sergeant. Although the early years of their marriage were happy, their relationship began to deteriorate over time. They argued frequently, and the conflicts were severe. There were concerns that Sam might have violent tendencies. They later filed for divorce in August 2006, after nearly 13 years together. However, by the winter of 2006, they had reconciled and decided to continue their relationship. In March 2007, Teresa decided to end their relationship and went on vacation to Mexico without her husband. After returning from vacation, Teresa started looking for a new place to live in another city, while Sam would stay in their old house. She took a few days off to move and settle into her new home. The next day she moved her belongings to a new apartment. Then she visited her sister, Christina, who now lived near her. In the evening, Teresa left Christina's house. She drove her SUV back home. At around 10:30 a.m., she visited her good friend Rhonda's house. Although she had planned to go to her old house to move her belongings, she decided to stay longer to make sure that Sam had gone out and did not see her. She wanted to avoid any arguments. Rhonda was surprised that the once loving couple were now avoiding each other. Teresa revealed that Sam had always been short-tempered and aggressive, especially when he was drinking. They then ended their conversation. Rhonda went to bed while Teresa went to her ex-husband's house. The next morning at 6 a.m., Rhonda called her. Someone answered the phone, but there was silence on the other end. After a moment of silence, the call was disconnected. Rhonda tried to contact Teresa several more times but only got her voicemail. Rhonda called all the numbers Teresa had used, including her work number, but none of them worked. Concerned, Rhonda then contacted the police station to request a welfare check on Teresa, who did not return her calls. In the workplace, everyone was worried about Teresa's absence because she had never missed a shift before. A police team was sent to check on her at her ex-husband Sam's house. About half an hour after the call, around 6:30 a.m., the police arrived at Sam's house but got no response when they knocked on the door. They then searched the area, looking through the windows. They hoped to find Teresa's car to make sure she was okay, but only Sam's pickup truck was in the garage. The police then went to Teresa's new apartment, but no one answered the door there either, so they left without any information. The police later found Teresa's SUV near her ex-husband's house. No one saw her, even Sam tried calling her many times to ask about her. Initially, her relatives weren't too worried, thinking that Teresa was busy arranging her new apartment and might not have heard her phone while cleaning. However, it was unusual for her not to answer any calls, as that was not her typical behavior. The day passed without any updates on Teresa. Christina had a hunch that Teresa was in danger. Teresa's family then officially reported her missing to the sheriff. From the beginning, the police treated the case as a top priority. They sent several officers to talk to Teresa's ex-husband, Sam, to gather information about the events leading up to her disappearance. The Georgia Federal Bureau of Investigation became involved in the case. They had known about Teresa's family's domestic violence for years. On May 4, 2002, police were called by Teresa's neighbors to report that Sam was drunk and extremely aggressive. He had been drinking all day and was violent toward Teresa. The patrol officer observed a bruise on Teresa's face, indicating that she had recently been beaten. Despite this, she chose not to file charges against her husband. The next incident occurred on April 27, 2003, while they were on vacation in Florida. They were dining at a restaurant when her husband became intoxicated and began threatening to kill Teresa in front of others. She then attempted to leave the parking lot in her car. At that point, Sam pulled out his service weapon and fired several shots into the car. Even after the police arrived, he continued to verbally abuse her and denied firing his weapon. When Teresa accused him of something, Sam threatened to commit and end his own life. As a result, Sam was taken to a mental health facility in Florida, where he was held for 72 hours for evaluation. Doctors were particularly concerned about his disturbing statements, such as his claim that he knew how to dispose of a body without leaving a trace. Additionally, Sam had extensive experience concealing evidence. He is very familiar with the local area, including the least frequented locations. Kayla, Sam's ex-wife, described him as an alcoholic. When he drank, he became aggressive and violent. She recounted an incident where he smashed a glass on the floor in a fit of rage. Then grabbed her by the hair and dragged her through the broken pieces. He then chained her to the bed and only released her in the morning when he left for work. He also strangled Kayla and threatened her with a gun. She eventually escaped the abusive relationship by moving to another city to get away from him. The police were eager to solve Teresa's case quickly, especially since it involved 2 police officers, which would affect the reputation of the police department. They began by investigating Teresa's new apartment and Sam's house. When police arrived at Teresa's apartment, they found a note on the door from the courier saying that Teresa's order could not be delivered. Inside the house, everything appeared normal, with several cardboard boxes filled with Teresa's belongings. The police then searched Sam's home 5 times, which frustrated him, especially when they confiscated his hunting weapons for examination. Ultimately, the searches yielded no clues to Teresa's disappearance. All of her belongings, including her money and phone, were left behind. There was no activity on her bank accounts, so the possibility of her running away was rejected. At the end of March 2007, the entire Lafayette community was in confusion. Teresa had disappeared and no one knew where she was. This left everyone worried and many avoiding going out after dark. Those close to her suspected that Sam had something to do with it. However, Sam also expressed concern about Teresa's disappearance. He explained that she wanted to avoid divorce proceedings, so she ran away. However, this explanation did not seem reasonable. Hundreds of residents volunteered to assist police in searching for Teresa. Police made numerous attempts to locate her. Divers searched all local waters, and areas such as underwater caves were explored with robotic cameras. Posters with Teresa's image were placed on billboards and flyers were distributed throughout the community. During the search, police found no sign of her. The situation was further complicated by the rugged terrain, which included dense forests, numerous small lakes, and mountains. The police questioned everyone who knew Teresa. Within a week, the police had interviewed over 100 people. During these interviews, it became clear that Sam had a volatile personality, was extremely jealous, and lost control when he drank. Meanwhile, Teresa was determined to save their marriage. She kept her husband's abuse a secret and did not share it with anyone, although her relatives suspected that there were serious problems in their family. In March 2007, everyone was relieved when Teresa decided to divorce her husband, and they supported her decision. However, Sam's family had a different view of him. They described him as cheerful and kind, and although he struggled with alcoholism. Sam's brother claimed that most of their conflicts were actually caused by Teresa's actions, rather than by Sam. Only Sam's younger sister spoke up, saying that he did have a quick temper and, unlike Teresa, he often escalated conflicts instead of stopping them. On March 25, police interviewed Sam. At the time, he was not considered a suspect. However, during the interview, he provided information that contradicted what police knew. Sam claimed that he saw Teresa's car in the parking lot when he went fishing that morning. This claim was dismissed by police, as they did not find her car at the house at the time. The car later appeared near the house, but no one witnessed how it got there. He also falsely claimed that he had not contacted Teresa, but police discovered several calls he had made to her that morning. While this may seem like a small lie, it aroused suspicion, leading the investigation to take a closer look at Sam. Sam presented a different version of events. He suggested that Teresa may have run off with her boyfriend, Elvis, whom she had allegedly met on a recent trip to Cancun, Mexico. To investigate this claim, police traveled to Mexico. They interviewed hundreds of people, including tour guides, hotel staff, and local residents. However, they found no clues or evidence to support the story, nor could they identify her boyfriend, Elvis, which led them to doubt his story. Despite growing concerns about the case, Sam continued to deny any involvement in the crime. On April 3, police arrested a man in connection with Teresa's disappearance. To the shock of many, it was not Sam who was arrested, but his colleague, Ben Chapin. Police kept the details of the arrest secret. Ben was eventually released and cleared of any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Sam was fired from the police department after 25 years of service due to his abusive behavior toward his ex-wives. He was permanently banned from returning to the force after his suspension. An internal investigation into Sam discovered explosives in his personal locker. The investigation into Teresa's case took months. Police were initially puzzled when Teresa's car returned to a parking lot near Sam's home. They discovered blood stains and signs of thorough cleaning in the car. Additionally, the trunk mat was missing. DNA analysis showed a sample belonged to Teresa, while they also found Sam's DNA in the same location. The police decided to arrest Sam. On February 4, 2008, nearly a year after Teresa's disappearance, police arrived at Sam's home, opened the door, and were arrested without resistance. The next day, he faced multiple charges, including murdering Teresa, invasion of privacy via computer, violation of public servant's oath, and invasion of citizen privacy. He was held without bail. Despite these charges, Sam maintained his innocence. Teresa's family, meanwhile, continued to insist that Sam was responsible for her disappearance, insisting that she feared him and did not want to return home. Despite the murder charges against Teresa, police have yet to find her body. Under state judicial practice, the chances of the prosecution winning the case are slim. Traditionally, few murderers have been convicted in cases where the victim's body is missing. As a result, the prosecution relied heavily on witness testimony, including Sam's ex-wives and Teresa's relatives. On August 17, 2009, in Walker County Superior Court, the prosecution alleged that Sam Parker had a history of violence against all of his ex-wives and was involved in an attempted murder. Sam had once confessed to his doctor that, as a police officer, he knew how to effectively hide a body. The prosecution detailed an incident that occurred when Teresa came to Sam's house to collect some of her belongings. They then got into an argument. During the argument, he killed Teresa, put her body in the trunk of her car. He then disposed of her body and carefully washed the car to remove any evidence. He then called his friend Ben and confessed that he had shot Teresa and planned to hide her body somewhere where it would never be discovered. He asked Ben to keep this conversation a secret. Ben shared his story just before the trial after reaching a deal with the prosecutor to drop all charges against him. Ben was supposed to testify against Sam. The prosecution said that during the time Teresa was missing, Sam suffered scratches on his hands and face. The prosecutor's office believes that these scratches were caused by Teresa in self-defense. Sam's attorney argued that he did not touch Teresa or her car. Teresa may have injured herself and then cleaned up the evidence and threw away an old rug before disappearing. The defense argued that all of the prosecution's evidence was circumstantial. Sam accused Teresa of having an affair. He even investigated her while she was on vacation and discovered that she had booked a double room, even though she was traveling alone. She also used a false name when booking the room. Sam suspected that Teresa had secretly met with his colleague, a police officer who had searched their home 5 times, but his colleague denied the allegations. Ultimately, the choice of the double room could simply have been because it had a large bed for comfort, or perhaps there were no single rooms available at the hotel. Sam still denies any involvement in the crime, arguing that there is no strong evidence to prove his involvement in the case or confirm Teresa's death. The jury was deadlocked and unable to reach a verdict, leading to the decision to retry. On December 3, 2009, 2.5 years after Teresa's disappearance, Sam Parker was convicted of murder, and he was also charged with obstructing and violating the oath of office of a civil servant. Sam was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 5 years. Sam continued to maintain that he had nothing to do with Teresa's disappearance. After the trial, he requested a new trial, but his appeal was denied. 3.5 years after Teresa's mysterious disappearance, on September 20, 2010, 2 farmers found a human jawbone in a cornfield near the Chattooga River in Georgia after a flood. A search party later discovered a nearly complete skeleton, and dental records confirmed that it belonged to Teresa. Her death was finally officially recognized. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head from a hole in the skull, not a gunshot wound. The discovery site was 100 kilometers from her home and on the route that Sam had taken to fish. Was confirmed by geolocation data. This led the police to conclude that Sam was responsible for Teresa's murder. Despite this evidence, Sam Parker maintained his innocence. He is currently serving a life sentence in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Schulhoff. Courtney Schulhoff was born in 1987 in Florida to Stephen and Tracy. While details about her childhood are limited, we do know that her parents divorced when she was young, which was a challenging experience for her. After the divorce, her mother moved out and Courtney stayed with her father. Eventually, Stephen faced significant financial problems, which led to their move. In 2003, Courtney attended Lyman High School. She was a hardworking student at first, but after her parents divorced, her grades began to drop rapidly. She rarely attended school, stopped trying, and became a poor student. Outside of school, Courtney's personality also changed. She began hanging out with a group of friends who were known for bad behavior, which negatively affected her. Tensions between Courtney and her father Stephen escalate, forcing her to temporarily move in with her mother Tracy. However, this arrangement does not last long. Tracy cannot accept the changes in Courtney, so Stephen has no choice but to welcome her back home. Once again, Courtney and her father face unresolved issues, including her difficulties with school. During this time, Courtney and her friends often gather at the racetrack across from her school, where she meets and begins dating a 20-year-old college student named Michael. Michael Morin was a former high school football player who, unlike Courtney, had performed well academically. He received straight A's and was now attending a nearby college. His parents had high expectations for him, but everything changed after he met Courtney. After a few weeks of talking, they began spending all their free time together. Courtney's father, Stephen, was extremely upset about her poor grades, and this only intensified when he learned about her decision to be with Michael. He quickly started blaming Michael for this choice. Their relationship was already strained, and this situation made it worse. Courtney felt that her father didn't want her to be happy. She tried to explain that Michael was a good person, but Stephen refused to see him in that way. He had heard rumors about Michael being involved in car theft and wanted to caution Courtney that no matter what Michael did, he would never earn her father's approval. After a series of arguments, Courtney began to accuse her father of being abusive, and there was some evidence to support her accusations. One day, when Courtney invited some friends over, including Michael, her father Stephen came home earlier than expected, leading to an altercation. While Courtney and her friends were drinking and smoking, Stephen suddenly entered the room. Enraged, he yelled at his daughter for throwing a party without his permission. After a brief argument, Stephen punched Courtney in the face in front of her friends. The situation between Courtney and her father, Stephen, remained tense. Although Courtney had stopped going to school, she refused to find a job and frequently used her father's credit card without asking. She would come home with new clothes and items purchased online. By this time, Stephen's financial situation had worsened, making things even more challenging. For several months, Courtney continued her troubling behavior, often sneaking Michael into their home at night while her father was asleep. Eventually, Stephen prohibited Courtney from seeing her boyfriend, but she ignored his wishes and invited Michael over whenever she pleased. Every conversation between Courtney and her father focused on his harsh criticism of Michael. As the months passed, the situation became increasingly difficult. One day, Stephen checked his bank account and noticed some money missing. He called the police, reporting his daughter to them, apparently to teach her a lesson. After speaking with the police, Courtney returned home, now much more afraid of her father. She began to see him as strict, unkind, and a real threat. She devised a plan, determined to break free from Stephen's control. By the end of 2003, Stephen was in a relationship with a woman named Elaine. During this same time, Courtney was working towards earning her high school diploma while continuing to date Michael. Frustrated by Courtney's father's efforts to control their relationship, the couple decided to run away. However, they faced a major obstacle. Neither had a car or any money. Their plan was to take Michael's father's car and drive to Maryland, where they could ask Courtney's grandparents for financial assistance. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Michael stole his father's car, but while on the way to Maryland, they changed their minds and turned back home. This decision led to serious consequences for both Michael and Courtney. Michael's parents reported him to the police, and he was charged with car theft, resulting in a 70-day. Furthermore, Michael's parents insisted that he end his relationship with Courtney, believing it to be detrimental to him. This relationship was indeed harmful to both of them. Michael was forced to break up with Courtney, but he refused. As a result, his parents decided to kick him out of the house, leaving him homeless. He began sneaking into Courtney's apartment to sleep there, something he had done occasionally before, but now happened every night. Additionally, Michael dropped out of college, changed his address to Stephen's, and put Stephen's phone number on his parole application without Stephen's involvement or permission. Although Michael had nowhere to live, he made no attempt to find a job, which left Courtney to pay all of her father's credit card bills. When Stephen attempted to talk to his daughter about her mounting debt, an unforeseen tragedy struck first. On February 10, 2004, Elaine, Stephen's new girlfriend, attempted to call him multiple times, but he didn't answer. Concerned that something might be wrong, she decided to go to his house. Between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m., she drove to his place and was surprised by what she saw. Michael, Courtney's boyfriend, was walking down the street with Stephen's dog, wearing one of Stephen's t-shirts. Feeling uneasy, Elaine got out of her car and approached the front door of Stephen's house, where she found Courtney standing by the entrance. Elaine tried to enter, but the door was locked. She asked Courtney where her father was, but Courtney said she didn't know and left without opening the door, taking the key with her. Elaine saw that Stephen's truck was still parked in its usual spot, which made her even more worried, so she decided to call the police. When the local police arrived, they quickly obtained a search warrant following Elaine's phone call. They entered the house through the back door and began their search, uncovering a horrific scene. Inside Stephen's room, they found blood splatter on the walls. The most shocking discovery was Stephen's body in a plastic trash can. He had a severed ear and a disfigured face. It was clear that the perpetrator didn't bother to hide their actions. Additionally, the police found several bank statements on the dining room table, many of them circled in pen. Meanwhile, Courtney was missing. Elaine learned of the altercation between Stephen, his daughter, and her boyfriend, so the police quickly began a search. The police found Michael in the restroom of the mall across the street from Stephen's house. As Elaine said, he was wearing one of Stephen's t-shirts and had Stephen's wallet, car keys, and credit cards in his possession. The police took Michael in for questioning. After leaving her father's apartment earlier that day, Courtney simply went to her mother's house, where her mother made her turn herself in. During questioning, Michael initially insisted that he knew nothing about the murder. Michael claimed that after being kicked out of the house, he had been living in Courtney's closet. One day, when Stephen returned home, Courtney woke Michael up and told him that her father had found out he was staying with them. When he asked Courtney why, she said she would explain later and asked him to walk the dog, which he did. Michael ran to the mall because he was worried that Stephen would find out he was near his home. However, after the police informed him of Stephen's death, his story changed dramatically. He began to cry and said that after Stephen tried to confront Courtney about the missing money on his credit card, she asked Michael to kill Stephen and he agreed. His story shifts from being unaware of the death to saying he was asked to kill Stephen. Courtney's interrogation was also unproductive. She gave two different statements. In her first interrogation, she blamed Michael entirely, claiming she had no knowledge of her father's death until he informed her. In a later confession, however, she revealed much more information to police. Courtney maintained that the murder was Michael's idea and admitted to helping him by removing Stephen's dog from the room before the incident and placing the bat by the bedroom door. She said she heard everything while Michael killed her father. But by the end of the trial in September 2006, her story had changed dramatically. Courtney was convicted of murder. When asked if she had any final statements, she maintained her innocence throughout the trial but stated that she wanted to publicly acknowledge that Michael Morin did not kill her father. She took full responsibility and agreed to her sentence. This shocking admission took everyone in the courtroom by surprise. However, Courtney's stance changed less than a year later. At Michael's trial in April 2007, where he faced the death penalty if convicted, Courtney did not repeat her previous statement that she was solely responsible for the crime and that Michael had nothing to do with it. Ultimately, Michael Morin was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2017, Courtney Schulhoff was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Although both men involved were punished, the exact details of the case remain unclear. It was confirmed that Stephen was killed with a baseball bat. But it is still unclear which of the two did the killing. Courtney did not confess to killing her father, but Michael did. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Kriegel. Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel lived in Ireland. In 2006, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The couple had a strong relationship and dreamed of having a child. They understood that adopting a child from an orphanage required significant time and effort, as well as meeting strict requirements, but they remained hopeful. Both had successful careers and were financially stable while waiting for their adoption documents to be processed. Eventually, they received news that a 2-year-old girl from Russia was available for adoption. Her name was Anastasia, born on February 18, 2004, in Novokuznetsk. After her birth, she was placed in an orphanage because her biological mother could not provide her with a good life. On August 10, 2006, the family brought the little girl home, marking the day as their family holiday. They decided to keep her name and called her Anna for short. The happy moment when they heard Anna's laughter filled the house. Anna was loved by her parents. They made efforts to make their family happier. They went ice skating and planned summer tourism trips. The family often went on vacation to Patrick's hometown of Annecy, France, where they owned the house. Anna made several friends there and she looked forward to this trip every year, as she loved France and was even learning French. However, Anna struggled with learning English, and Patrick supported her in this so she could communicate better with her peers. Anna also found it difficult to form close relationships and express her emotions. Her time in the orphanage, where Anna lacked care, made her uncomfortable with being touched. Nevertheless, Geraldine and Patrick helped fill this emotional gap by loving and supporting Anna unconditionally. Their nurturing environment, along with educational activities, healthy meals, and sports, provided a strong foundation for Anna's future. During a routine checkup, doctors discovered a tumor in Anna's right ear, which resulted in significant hearing loss in her right ear and partial blindness in her right eye. Despite these challenges, Anna remained an active and cheerful girl. However, her hearing and vision problems affected her ability to learn, causing her to struggle to retain information and resulting in poor grades in elementary school. To keep up with her classmates, Anna sought professional help until the end of 3rd grade. One day, while walking home and enjoying her favorite music through her headphones, Anna suddenly encountered 4 boys blocking her way. They mocked her and even pinched her, causing her to run home in tears and tell her mother everything. Worried, Geraldine and Patrick decided to take action and file a complaint against the boys. To keep Anna safe, her parents decide to take her to school and pick her up every day, but this makes her an easier target for teasing, much to the distress of Geraldine, who feels heartbroken over her daughter's misfortune. As time passed, Anna began to harm herself to cope with her emotional struggles. Her parents became increasingly alarmed, worried that she might take more drastic actions. Geraldine's only wish was for her daughter to find happiness. After a while, Anna started to improve. She made new friends, people she enjoyed sleeping over, going for walks, watching movies, and chatting with. As Anna's high school years were coming to an end, Geraldine wanted to help her prepare for her upcoming test on May 13, 2018. They usually spent the weekends doing homework together, and even though Geraldine was very busy, he always made time to study with Anna. However, this weekend, they decided to take a break. They turned on the TV, made popcorn, and cuddled up while watching a movie. Anna's cousins joined them, and Geraldine ordered pizza. The kids played games while the adults relaxed with wine and snacks. The house was filled with laughter and fun, and no one could have predicted what would happen next. On May 14, 2018, the day started like any other. Geraldine took the train to Dublin, while Anna went to school. After lunch, Anna had an appointment with a psychologist. Meanwhile, Patrick, who was already retired, decided to sleep in. Classes ended at 4 p.m., and Anna tried to call her mother, but Geraldine was in an important meeting and couldn't answer. She sent Anna a message saying she would call back later. When Anna gets home, she finds her father Patrick relaxing in the garden. Patrick is surprised to see Anna, coming home with a boy he has never seen before. Anna is clearly excited. She whispers something to the boy, grabs her favorite sweater, and tells her father she will be home soon. Patrick reminds her that she needs to study, which she has forgotten. Patrick watches as they leave for the park, and that is the last time he sees his daughter. At first, her father wasn't concerned because the park was only a 20-minute walk away. At 5:10 p.m., Geraldine returned home and attempted to call Anna, but she didn't pick up. After some time, she gave up on calling, assuming Anna would return soon. When Anna still hadn't come home, Patrick told his wife that Anna had gone to the park with a guy. This was unusual. Geraldine quickly sent Anna a text asking her to come home but got no reply. This silence worried her parents. Geraldine felt anxious due to past experiences where her daughter faced ridicule for her illnesses. Worried, Geraldine went to the park but couldn't find Anna. The parents began driving around the neighborhood searching for her. Their anxiety grew when they realized they knew nothing about the guy Anna had been with. By 9 p.m., they reported Anna missing to the police, stressing that she hadn't answered any calls or messages, which was very unlike her. They also informed the police about the unknown guy. The police quickly located a young man named Boy B, who appeared surprised by their inquiry. When they asked him where Anna was, he explained that they had walked together until 5:40 p.m. and then parted ways. Following this, the police initiated a search for Anna, scouring the area and examining surveillance footage. Patrick and Geraldine, Anna's parents, provided photos, including one of her wearing the black sweatshirt she had on when she left that evening. While the police analyzed video footage that showed Boy B and Anna in the park around 5 p.m., they noticed that at 5:14 p.m., the two left the park through a different exit, and after that, Anna seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The investigation was accelerated when a witness reported seeing the couple in the park. The video showed Boy B walking alone in the park at 5:49 p.m. When pressed by police, Boy B revealed that he had been with a friend named Boy A, who had feelings for Anna, and that he had facilitated their meeting. With this new lead, police stepped up their search efforts, sharing information about Anna's disappearance on social media and in local newspapers. At the same time, the search for Boy A started. His backpack was discovered, and security cameras captured him going in and out of the park, but there was a long period where he wasn't seen. Some people thought Anna might have run away, but that idea was quickly rejected. To solve the mystery of her disappearance, police carefully examined what happened in the park that day, looking closely at the actions of Boy B and Boy A with their parents present. The boys' interactions raised suspicions among the police, resulting in them being questioned separately. Boy B's testimony remained consistent, but Boy A's story differed. He was surprised when Boy B asked him to go with him, knowing that Anna had feelings for him. During their conversation, Boy A described a frightening incident in which two unknown men attacked them, leading to a struggle in which he injured one of the attackers. He showed police his injuries, including scratches and cuts to his face, suggesting that the unknown men might be involved in Anna's disappearance. As a result, the police asked for descriptions of the attackers and collected the boys' belongings for DNA testing. As the investigation continued, specialized search teams, including divers and rescue teams, were sent to examine local waters. A total of 60 people, including volunteers and Anna's family, assisted in the search for her. Her disappearance attracted significant media attention. Near the park, there was an old, abandoned farmhouse called Glenwood. An eyewitness saw some young people going inside, which led the police to investigate. The farmhouse was 2 stories high and covered 42 hectares of land, but it was in a state of disrepair, with many collapsed roofs and walls. It was puzzling why the police hadn't examined the place sooner. They began their search in the park and then moved towards the farmhouse, thoroughly checking both the house and the surrounding fields. Inside, the house was dark and empty. One of the officers was struck by a strong, foul odor that filled the room. The officers then discovered the body of a woman, surrounded by clothes and a broken phone. There were also traces of blood nearby. along with a brick and a large tree branch. Based on the clothing, it was determined that it was Anna's body. She had multiple wounds, and her neck was wrapped in duct tape. Her body lay among broken bottles and debris. The incident profoundly affected Geraldine and Patrick, as the loss of their beloved daughter was an unimaginable sorrow. The whole city was informed of the events, leaving many residents in shock. The farmhouse, which was once a safe place for children to play, had turned into the site of a terrible crime. On May 18, 2018, hundreds attended Anna Kriegel's funeral, wearing red and white armbands in her memory. The Eiffel Tower represented her love for her hometown, while her father honored her birthplace by wearing the Russian flag and carrying a doll. An autopsy revealed that Anna had suffered about a dozen injuries to her body, with numerous bruises and cuts concentrated on her head, face, and neck. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. An asphyxiation suggested she had been raped. Evidence of semen was found at the scene. Her death occurred between 5:25 and 5:54 p.m., shortly after she left the park. At the entrance to the building, she was beaten with a heavy stick and then hit with a brick, leaving blood splattered on the wall. On May 24th, police gathered all the evidence and arrested two teenagers, Boy B and Boy A, who were last seen with Anna. The townspeople were shocked, as both were suspected of killing her. In Boy A's backpack, they found a zombie mask with traces of Anna's blood, along with gloves and knee pads. Semen found at the crime scene matched Boy A's DNA, and Anna's blood was also found on his shoes and clothes. Despite the evidence against Boy A, no DNA was linked to Boy B. During questioning, Boy B admitted that he saw Anna enter an abandoned house with Boy A but claimed that he did not know what Boy A was up to. Boy B wanted to enter the house but was frightened when he heard screaming coming from the entrance. He then sees Boy A tearing Anna's clothes, realizing the danger, but Boy B does not speak up, even though Anna's fate depends on his actions. Both boys were released on bail while awaiting their trial, which caused frustration among local residents. People became increasingly concerned for their safety, especially since the identities of the boys had not been made public. Both boys came from well-respected and successful families, and they had no previous criminal records or mental health issues, which surprised the community. Their case hearing took place on April 30, 2019. It was a closed hearing, with only the parents of the two teenagers in attendance. The prosecutor explained that Boy B deceived Anna into leaving her home by claiming she would meet Boy A, someone she was interested in. Instead, Boy B took her to an abandoned house where she was raped. The jury trial took place on June 12, 2019, and 5 days later, Boy A received a life sentence, with the option for a review after 12 years. Boy B was also convicted for Anna's death, despite insufficient physical evidence, and was sentenced to 15 years, eligible for review after 8 years. By law, their identities must remain confidential, and if released, they will be provided with new identities. However, Anna's parents endured the heaviest loss. Geraldine expressed that life without Anna lost its meaning. Patrick passed away on June 19, 2022, burdened with the guilt of allowing his daughter to go off with a stranger that day. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Assunta Botera. Rosario Porto and her husband, Alfonso Botera, were wealthy individuals. Rosario's father served as an influential French consul, and her mother was an art teacher. Rosario followed in his father's footsteps. She became a successful lawyer. In 1997, she was appointed French consul. She inherited this post from her father. Alfonso was a well-known journalist. He and Rosario married in 1996, and they moved to a large apartment in an upscale area of Santiago de Compostela, Spain. Rosario had lupus erythematosus, which led doctors to advise against pregnancy. They decided to adopt a child abandoned by his parents and create a loving home for him. Adoption was challenging in Spain, so when they were in their early 30s, they chose to go to China for adoption. After navigating numerous bureaucratic hurdles, they arrived at an orphanage. Rosario immediately noticed a 9-month-old girl, and within 2 weeks, they resolved all issues to officially adopt her. When returning to Spain, the child's documents named her Asunta Fon Yan. This was notable since Asunta was among the first Chinese children adopted in the area. Initially, it seemed fortunate for her to join a respected and wealthy family, but unfortunately, this joy did not last long. Asunta was a highly capable girl. She excelled academically, studied multiple languages, practiced ballet, and attended music school. It seems that Rosario and Alfonso want to give her every opportunity to develop. On July 4, 2013, Rosario and her 12-year-old daughter, Asunta, went to the beach to cool off on a hot day. Asunta told a terrifying story about a man wearing a black mask and gloves who tried to strangle her the night before. The longer the girl talked, the more she lost control, and finally, her mother cried. She knew about it, she was there when it happened, but for some reason she did not contact the police. On the night of September 21, 2013, at 10:30 p.m., Rosario and Alfonso were at the police station for another reason. They reported their daughter, Asunta, was missing for several hours. Then, Rosario recounted Asunta's story of the attempted attack from 2.5 months prior. This left them fearful that the attacker had returned and something terrible might have happened to their daughter. They were terrified she had been kidnapped. Alfonso was convinced she was no longer alive. They urgently pleaded with the police to take immediate action. In the early hours of September 22, 2 men were driving through a forest on their way back from a bar. Suddenly, the driver stopped, saying he noticed something unusual in the forest. He didn't understand what was going on, so he turned his headlights toward the forest and mentioned to his friend that he felt like someone was watching them. Despite this, he wasn't scared, likely due to the alcohol he had consumed, so he got out of the car and walked a few steps into the forest. In the light of the car's headlights, he saw something on the ground that looked like a doll. As he approached, he realized it was a girl. She was tied up, and her clothes were dirty. He checked for a pulse and found that the girl was dead. Then, they quickly contacted the police. The police identified the body as Asunta, who had died just a week before her 13th birthday. While examining the area near her body, they discovered her mobile phone, which contained some disturbing photographs. There are several photos of she wrapped tightly, lying with her eyes wide open. Some forensic experts suggested her dilated pupils indicated possible drug use. Even more distressing were photos of the girl in revealing clothing, with bright makeup, fishnet stockings, and posing provocatively on a couch. Her eyes remained wide open, and her pupils were dilated. These photos later appeared on the internet, were widely circulated and making people angry about how a child was treated like that. Asunta's last day was described by her parents as ordinary. However, then little girl suddenly went missing and was found dead a few hours after they reported her disappearance. On that day, the girl went to visit her father, Alfonso, at his work, and then hurried back home, so she not wanting to miss The Simpsons at about 7 p.m. After she returned home, Rosario, her mother, came back from work and saw her daughter in her room, where she had her books spread out on the floor for homework. Rosario didn't notice anything unusual and left to go to their country house, which was about half an hour away, to pick up bathing suits and other items for a planned beach outing the next day. Rosario returned around 9:30 p.m., and by then, Asunta was no longer in the apartment. Rosario became worried because little girl hadn't called or mentioned any plans to go out, which was unusual for her. Thinking maybe she had gone to see friends, Rosario started calling the girl's friends and Alfonso, but nobody had seen she. Rosario was the last person to see Assunta alive, making her one of the first individuals the detectives focused on, and she was questioned at the station. During her discussion with the police, Rosario recalled the incidents of July 4th, the night of the first attack. When they returned from the store that evening, Assunta closed the front door but left the key in the lock. Her mother didn't notice, and they went to bed. Around 3 a.m., Rosario was awakened by cries for help. Rosario rushed to her daughter's room and saw a large man pinning little girl to the floor, seemingly trying to strangle her. She attacked the intruder, but he was very strong and easily threw her against the wall. Fortunately, no one was harmed, and the attacker fled. Rosario described him as a strong, middle-aged man dressed in black, wearing a mask and gloves, so it is not possible to give a more detailed description. Assunta told her friend about what happened and even sent several photos showing red marks on her neck. Assunta's father, Alfonso, mentioned that little girl had struggled with depression for a long time and was taking medication prescribed by doctors. This was confirmed because Assunta talked to friends and shared her experiences. Recently, she had been speaking more positively about her situation, saying she felt much better. However, after Assunta was first attacked, Rosario did not investigate to find out what was happening to her daughter. She cited Assunta's fragile emotional state and said she feared contacting police would upset Assunta. This explanation was not very convincing. Over the years, Assunta had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital because she often expressed end-her-life thoughts. Besides, she is very tired because of the overload of knowledge at school and extra classes. The nanny also said that Rosario had recently become very frustrated with Assunta, as little girl was no longer meeting Rosario's expectations, and her academic performance had declined. She had become somewhat of a burden, prompting Rosario to consider sending her to study in Poland. However, Rosario did not mention this to the detectives, so they decided to investigate Rosario's immediately. They were particularly interested in the country house Rosario visited on the day Assunta disappeared. As it turned out, when detectives got there, they found Assunta's body lying just 4 kilometers away. Rosario appeared surprised to see them. She was furious. She quickly headed to the second floor, clearly trying to hide something. When a detective checked a nearby trash can, he found a piece of orange rope inside, identical to the one used to tie Assunta's hands and feet. There was also a black mask and gloves. All these items were collected for examination, but unfortunately, no fingerprints or DNA were found. The investigative committee conducted several autopsies. They did not measure the body temperature immediately, fearing it might compromise the evidence, so the exact time of death couldn't be determined. However, it was estimated that Assunta was killed around 8 p.m. The cause of death was suffocation. Her mouth and nose were covered with a soft object, likely a pillow, which prevented her from breathing, leading to unconsciousness and eventually death. In addition, an autopsy determined that Assunta had taken at least 27 lorazepam pills on the day of her death, 9 times the normal amount for an adult. Hair tests revealed this was not the first occurrence. Little girl had overdoses 3 months before her death, starting when the attacker first breaks into the home. It's important to note that overdoses of this drug can cause amnesia and loss of muscle control. The drug was used to treat anxiety disorders and insomnia. The police discovered that Rosario used it to combat depression, but it was not prescribed for Assunta. No one could explain why Assunta took the drug. According to Rosario, the criminals gave Assunta medicine so she wouldn't remember the incident. Detectives conducted a review of CCTV footage in the area to track Assunta's movements that day. Around 2 p.m., she visited her father, Alfonso. At 5:21 p.m., she returned home, and at 5:28 p.m., Rosario returned home. at 6:20 p.m. A gas station camera recorded a green Mercedes belonging to Rosario. She admitted the car was moving towards a house in the country. It was clear that besides the driver, there was a girl in the car, identified as Assunta. They were heading in the direction where Assunta's body was later found. The new testimony completely contradicted Rosario's earlier statements, making she the primary suspect in the murder. Therefore, she was questioned again. Rosario's face showed fear and shame because she had let her adopted daughter go missing while she was responsible for taking care of the girl. Then, she offered a different version of events. According to her, they went out to get swimsuits together, but when they arrived at the country house, Assunta refused to enter with her. Assunta chose to stay in the car while Rosario took everything she needed and did some small work. However, this took longer than expected, and Assunta wanted to return home to do chores and rest. Rosario agreed and drove her daughter back. But she dropped her daughter off about a 20-minute walk from their apartment to avoid navigating the narrow streets. However, the police reviewed CCTV footage from the outskirts of Santiago but found no evidence of Rosario taking her daughter back home. They only saw footage of Rosario leaving her country house alone around 9 p.m. Her story is full of controversial and contradictory details. She appeared to look at the detectives with arrogance, displaying coldness and showing no regret over the loss of her child. She persistently insisted that the large man in black was involved in the incident. When the police interviewed the Botera family's neighbors, one mentioned hearing screams at night in July, when Assunta was first attacked. He also observed something unusual. Even though the attacker entered an area where dogs lived, the dogs were silent, indicating that the attacker was very familiar with them. All in all, everything seemed suspicious, making them even more suspicious that Rosario and Alfonso were involved in the murder of their adopted daughter. The police considered different theories about the first home invasion. Some thought it was fabricated by Rosario, while others suspected it was the parents' first attempt at murder. Few believed an outsider was involved. On September 24th, Rosario and Alfonso held a funeral, during which they behaved oddly, even taking a selfie in front of the coffin. Due to inconsistencies in her testimony, Rosario was arrested after the funeral. By then, detectives had discovered what might have been the motive behind the crime. Witnesses came forward with information about incident from 9 months prior to the tragedy, and this may have been the beginning of the bloody end. In January 2013, Rosario started a relationship with a realtor named Manuel Garcia, whom she hired to sell real estate. Manuel was married and made it clear he would not leave his family. He considers the relationship with Rosario to be nothing more than an affair. Rosario was fine with this, and their secret relationship continued. During this time, her relationship with her husband, Alfonso, quickly deteriorated. She finds Alfonso boring and considers him a failure who overestimates himself. She described him as insensitive, while her lover, Manuel, was the complete opposite. After Alfonso finds messages from Rosario's lover on his wife's phone, they divorced in February 2013. Rosario and her daughter Assunta continued living in the apartment. She maintained her business and visited a country house. Custody of the daughter, Assunta, was shared, and both parents have the right to see the little girl. After Assunta's parents divorced, she lived in both her father's and her mother's houses. Many observed that she was always close to her mother, while her relationship with her father was not as warm. However, her father made efforts to improve their relationship. He also repeatedly told his ex-wife Rosario that they would be forever tied together through their adopted daughter. Is it possible that because Rosario wanted to completely cut off contact with her ex-husband, so she will cause the innocent child to leave forever? It is known that earlier in the summer, Rosario had to end her relationship with her lover, Manuel. Alfonso took advantage of the opportunity. he convincing Rosario to end her relationship with Manuel in exchange for his help with their daughter while she was in the hospital. And Rosario agreed to this request. However, it was revealed that on September 21st, Rosario broke her promise, she spending most of the day with Manuel and only returning home in the evening. This is very suspicious, because soon after, Assunta was killed. During the investigation, numerous assumptions were made, including one significant point emphasized by the defense. They argued that male DNA was found on the clothes Assunta's, indicating a man's involvement. While it was considered possible that the mother was not involved in the crime, this scenario was deemed unlikely. Police have stepped up their investigation, collecting documents for analysis, focusing on identifying male DNA on Assunta's body. Several options were considered during the investigation. At first, Alfonso was suspected, but then all attention turned to Manuel. However, he had an alibi and had no motive to harm Assunta, so he was quickly dismissed as a suspect. Surprisingly, the DNA was identified as belonging to a stranger named Ramra, a Colombian citizen who lived in Madrid, about a 6-hour drive from Santiago, where the incident occurred. This may seem strange. When questioned, Ramra fervently denied any connection to the case, claiming he had never been to Santiago and had no involvement in the murder. Indeed, Ramra had an alibi. He was having dinner at a restaurant in Madrid with his girlfriend and was captured on CCTV footage there. Why had Assunta been taking prescription drugs in the months leading up to the incident without any prescription? Further examinations revealed that only a portion of the DNA traces found belonged to Ramra. The lab staff suggested that the match could be due to poor quality samples or contamination. There were even suggestions that someone might have intentionally tampered with the sample's DNA to mislead the investigation. At this stage, many questions remained unanswered, and detectives considered even the most unlikely scenarios. Rosario and Alfonso seemed indifferent to what happened to their adopted daughter. Rosario was the last person to see Assunta alive, and the press speculated that she could have acted alone. Despite her fragile appearance, but investigators doubted she could physically manage Assunta's body. Using cell phone towers, police tried to determine the whereabouts of Rosario and Alfonso at the time of the incident. On that day, their phones were turned off. This makes the police even more suspicious of them. However, Rosario explained it was a coincidence, and their phones just run out of battery at the same time. They don't have any bad intentions. After talking to a local pharmacist, who was also a friend of Rosario's, they discovered that Rosario first contacted the pharmacist on July 5th. The day after an intruder broke into the house and attacked Assunta. After that, this drug lorazepam was purchased in large quantities by Rosario. Considering all the circumstances, the detectives decided to arrest Alfonso Botera. Some of Assunta's teachers had noticed unusual behavior in her. One day, Assunta attended her violin lesson with her father, Alfonso, and she seemed unable to control herself. Alfonso explained that his daughter was just under the influence of allergy medication. The teachers observed that she was usually very reserved and did not share her problems. The drowsiness incident occurred repeatedly, but the parents always had excuses, typically citing her health condition. The teacher was suspicious and distrustful of the girl's parents. When the police interviewed Assunta's teacher, she described Assunta's symptoms and behavior, which matched many side effects of the medication. 2 days before the tragedy, the last suspicious incident happened. On that day, Rosario informed the teacher that her daughter couldn't attend class due to a severe reaction to prescribed medications. After hearing this, the detectives were convinced that the adoptive parents knew about the medications and attempted to poison Assunta. Although Rosario and Alfonso were divorced, but Alfonso was determined to reconcile with she. In June 2013, 3 months before the tragedy, Rosario experienced a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized. During this time, Alfonso moved back in, feeling optimistic as his wish to reunite with his family seemed to be coming true. During this period, Rosario ended her relationship with her lover. Alfonso visited her in the hospital and cared for her after her discharge. It seemed like family matters were improving, but later it was revealed that she had lied, she continuing her affair and meeting her lover on the day of the murder. Given the new information, the investigation believes that Alfonso sought revenge. Perhaps he wanted to cause Rosario more pain than he had to endure from her betrayal. This could explain why the orange rope ended up in the trash at the country house. It was simply tossed there by Alfonso. However, why was Rosario so alarmed when the police arrived, and why did she immediately check the trash? She likely knew about these items and was an accomplice. The police have discovered a new clue. Whenever Alfonso was at home with Rosario and Assunta, the little girl be drugged with lorazepam. However, Alfonso refused to comment on this, claiming he was not guilty. After the arrest, Rosario's behavior was unstable, alternating between hysteria and depression. Meanwhile, Alfonso remained quiet and calm, he constantly trying to reassure Rosario's by saying they just needed to love and support each other, and that everything would soon be over. Despite his soothing words, the police noticed his cold demeanor. Eventually, the police found the storage media Alfonso used. It turned out that the hard drive on his laptop had been completely replaced. Experts discovered that over 500,000 photos and videos had been stored on it, likely compromising material. The police also found that he had an unhealthy interest in Asian girls on his social media page. Evidence showed he had dozens of interactions and correspondence with Asian girls, and according to investigators, the photos suggested these girls were minors. Additionally, he often showed interest in adult Asian women with very youthful appearances. Later, a woman who owned an escort agency approached the police. She confessed that Alfonso was a regular at her establishment, always requesting only Asian women and insisting they dress as schoolgirls. Even his wife was aware of this preference. Photos of the murdered Assunta in revealing clothes made the situation even more serious. The prosecutor focused on how the seemingly calm and quiet Alfonso had cruelly treated his adopted daughter Assunta. The charges suggested that Rosario and Alfonso were criminals covering for each other, with both involved in Assunta's death. What could have motivated the crime? Rosario and Alfonso refused to cooperate with the investigation and wouldn't communicate without their lawyers. Later, on their attorney's advice, they completely stopped commenting on the tragedy. Forensic psychiatrists were crucial to the investigation. They analyzed Rosario and Alfonso's behavior and identified them as narcissists with personality disorders. It appeared they adopted Assunta to present a loving family image, pressured by Rosario's parents. Sadly, Assunta became a mere pawn for them, and once she was no longer needed, they first exploited her and then decided to eliminate her. A 15-year-old acquaintance of Assunta testified for the prosecution. Although Alfonso claimed he stayed home all day until the evening on the day of the murder, this was proven false. The girl saw him around 6 p.m. near Rosario's house, a fact later confirmed by camera footage. Alfonso was captured on camera at 9 p.m. after Assunta had disappeared. These conflicting details added to the evidence against Rosario and Alfonso. The trial was highly controversial, with even the judge's conduct coming under scrutiny. Many suspected he sought fame, suspicions that were later validated when he authored a book about the case after the trial concluded. Relatives and neighbors of the Botera family watched for years as the foster parents tried to create the best environment for Assunta. They are financially well off, ambitious and have a tough personality, but those close to them notice their devotion to Assunta. Many people still believe that the trial's outcome was a miscarriage of justice. In court, Rosario and Alfonso maintained their innocence. Alfonso remained calm and reasonable, while Rosario often cried, became hysterical, she puzzled in her testimony in justifying his behavior with the effects of the drug. Rosario's cousin testified at the trial and shared some new information. In 2011 and 2012, Rosario's parents both passed away suddenly at home. Their deaths were suspected to be under unusual circumstances. The cousin believed that Rosario was involved in the murders of her parents and daughter to inherit the entire property. However, the defense attorney rejected these claims. Rosario's mother passed away at the age of 77 and her father passed away at the age of 88. Both passed away peacefully from old age in their sleep in their beds. Although doctors found nothing unusual, their bodies, like Asunta's, were cremated, making it impossible to verify any unnatural causes of death. Meanwhile, the prosecutor contended that Rosario and Alfonso were true sociopaths. Alfonso was apparently a pedophile who drugged his daughter and chose to record these incidents. Asunta posed a threat of exposing them, leading to the decision to eliminate her. This theory was supported by numerous photographs and evidence indicating that Alfonso had an unhealthy obsession with young Asian girls. It is likely that Rosario was complicit in these activities or was at least aware of them but chose to protect Alfonso's wrongdoings. Alternatively, Rosario might have seen the girl as a burden and decided to eliminate little girl with the help of Alfonso. On October 30, 2015, the court found Rosario and Alfonso guilty and sentenced each to 18 years in prison. After beginning their sentences, they both appealed, but their appeals were rejected. On November 18, 2020, Rosario was discovered dead in her prison cell with a belt around her neck. This was her third try to end her life. Alfonso remains imprisoned and maintains his innocence. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sydney Stevens. Pinckneyville, located in the United States, is a small town known for its friendly local community and laid-back lifestyle. It is also a great place for fishing enthusiasts. On July 25, 2010, two fishermen were fishing in the near Boku Creek Bridge south of Pinckneyville when they spotted a strange object in the water. Approaching it, they realized it was the body of a girl floating face down. Her right arm was tied with a rope to a concrete block, but the body had risen to the surface due to decomposition and shallow water. The body was in a deteriorated state, making identification difficult. The only clues were a belly piercing and a necklace with a musical note pendant. After checking the information in the database, law enforcement officers discovered that a similar girl had recently disappeared. She was Sydney Stevens, 15, who had gone missing on July 19, 2010, exactly 1 week before body was discovered. Sydney's parents, Tracy and Tim, said she had recently suffered from mental health issues after learning that they had separated shortly before she went missing. She was shocked to learn that Tim, the man who raised her, was not her biological father. This revelation led to a mental disorder and severe depression. She ran away from home multiple times, isolated herself from friends, and even attempted ending her life. To protect her, the family decided to keep her at home under supervision. At this time, she was either cared for by her mother, Tim, or her 17-year-old half-sister, Dakota Wall. The house doors were kept locked, and everything was under control until the morning of July 20th, when her mother found she missing at 6:30 a.m. Tracy suspected something was wrong because Sydney's room was in complete disarray, the dresser was overturned, and belongings were scattered everywhere. She called Dakota, who suggested Sydney had run away again. However, Tracy's concern grew when she saw that Sydney was not logged into social media since the previous evening, which was unusual. Upon inspecting the room, she noticed all of Sydney's personal items were still there, including her purse, phone, shoes, and clothes. It didn't seem like she had run away, it was as if she had left in her pajamas and without shoes. Tracy attempted to locate Sydney but was unsuccessful. Sydney's friends were also unaware of her whereabouts, so Tracy filed a missing Sydney report with the police. The detectives were initially hesitant to take on this case. They knew Sydney had problems, so they thought she just ran away from home again and would come back home later. Therefore, investigators shelved Tracy's testimony and only her relatives and friends participated in the search for her. They searched, but in vain. A week later, on July 25, 2010, her body was discovered underwater. Her mother, Tracy, was summoned to the police station to identify her. Tracy immediately recognized her daughter's jewelry and confirmed a belly piercing. Dental records definitively identified the body as Sydney's. Once the body is identified, police need to determine what happened to her. The autopsy revealed shocking details, that is, Sydney was murdered. Forensic experts found evidence of multiple injuries, including gunshot wounds and signs of a violent death. This thing stunned everyone. They could not understand why the suspect could target the young girl in such a brutal way. The day before Sydney disappeared, she had planned to go on a hike with her friends, but her mother did not allow it, which made her very sad. She spent the entire day alone under house arrest. When police investigated the house, they found no signs of a break-in. The doors were always kept closed, suggesting that either a family member let the kidnappers in, or they had a key. The relatives insisted they didn't give keys to any strangers. At the time of the incident, only Tracy and Dakota were in the house. The police began questioning the closest relatives, friends, and Sydney's acquaintance, as those close to the victim are often involved in such crimes. Due to the violent nature of the crime, the investigators suspected a personal motive. Tracy reported coming home around 10 p.m. At that time, Sydney was in one room watching TV. Tracy had taken prescribed medication to sleep in her room. Tim was not home that night, he was on a business trip. The most scrutinized individuals were Sydney's sister, Dakota, and her boyfriend, Chad Bennett, who is 20 years old. They both denied any connection to the crime. Dakota stated that she saw Chad the day before, when he visited her to watch a movie, after which he went to work. Chad confirmed her account. However, detectives were suspicious of Chad because he had a criminal record, which included possession of illegal substances and petty theft. As a result, the police brought in his accomplices for questioning: Carl Dane, 18, James Glazier, 17, and Robbie Mueller, 15. All three were friends with Dakota, the old sister of Sydney. During questioning, the young men were evasive and inconsistent in their statements. Ultimately, they told a similar story but with different details. According to their accounts, on the night of July 19, 2010, Carl, James, and Robbie went to Sydney's house. They had a brutal plan, as part of their group ceremony, which required performing an evil deed. The plan was to kill Sydney's mother, Tracy, without leaving any evidence. However, as they were moving around house, Sydney woke up, stepped into the hallway, and called for her mother. The attackers stopped her in time, preventing her from making any noise. They held her mouth and nose so tightly that she lost consciousness. Then, they decide that killing Sydney is enough for their initiation ceremony and they choose not to harm Tracy. They carried her body to the car, but she regained consciousness. They continued to torture, beat, and strangle her until she passed out again. They then disposed of her by dumping her into the water, tying a concrete block to her body so it would sink and so that no one can find the body. However, this plan backfired because, during decomposition, gases are formed, causing the body to eventually float. All three individuals, Carl, James, and Robbie, were arrested on July 28. Their story seemed highly implausible. They initially intended to kill Tracy, but instead killed Sydney. Something was evidently amiss. The police suspected that, besides this heinous crime, they might have raped she, as her trousers were down when the body was discovered. However, none of the suspects admitted to this act. The body's condition was poor because the water had erased all evidence, so the police can't confirm this. About the lowered trousers, they denied rape, they suggesting it was related to the influence of illegal substances. Law enforcement knew that gangs have a hierarchy and strict discipline. Although Chad, the leader, denied his guilt, it was inevitable that he was involved in this crime. In fact, the attack could only have been carried out with his approval, especially since he could not avoid participating in the initiation everyone was talking about. It was known that Sydney had gunshot wounds, but members of Chad's team chose not to mention it, resulting in their statements being unreliable. Sydney was shot with a .22 caliber pistol. Carl, a member of Chad's group, who had once met Sydney, possessed a .22 caliber Ruger pistol. This weapon was quite costly, and Carl claimed he couldn't afford it, saying Chad had given it to him. Under the pressure of skilled police questioning, members of Chad's team admitted that he directed their actions. They agreed to testify against he, even though he continued to deny any involvement in the crime. Consequently, Chad was also arrested, though the police suspected there were more people involved in Sydney's murder. They believed Dakota might have been part of it, but she continued to deny any involvement, asserting that she loved her sister and they had a good relationship. Detectives continued their investigation after noticing many inconsistencies in the story. When speaking with the Sydney family's relatives and friends, detectives discovered that Dakota actually despised Sydney. She usually tries to join Dakota in group activities, which annoyed the group, especially Dakota. Dakota wants to spend more time with her boyfriend, Chad, instead of with her. However, Dakota was responsible for looking after she while their parents were at work and also have to clean and do other housework. Dakota couldn't get rid of Sydney, so she had to put up with it. At Sydney's funeral, Dakota appeared happy during the service. She smiled casually and chatted cheerfully with everyone who came to pay their respects. She seemed unaffected by her younger sister's passing. Police followed Dakota and they later questioned her for several hours. The detectives intentionally confused her with unexpected questions to catch her in a lie. Eventually, she began to disclose some details. She admitted that during a trip to another city, Nashville, she overheard her friends from the group discussing what had happened. This was on July 21st, just 2 days after Sydney disappeared. She said 2 members of the group, James and Carl, were talking about the murder. At first, she thought they were referring to someone else since Sydney's body had not yet been found, but then she realized they were speaking about her 15-year-old sister, Sydney. They discussed how they beat, strangled, and drowned Sydney, then tying body to a concrete block. Dakota began her story by explaining that on July 23rd, she was with Chad's group at Carl's house, where she overheard a conversation about the murder. Carl mentioned having a gun and he shot someone with that gun. Under police pressure, Dakota disclosed more details, admitting that she knew who was in a car parked near the house on the night Sydney disappeared. These individuals were members of Chad's group. They entered the house and did something to Sydney. She confessed this to the officer, but explained that she had been too afraid of they to speak up earlier. However, Dakota's account was becoming inconsistent. In her new testimony, she alleged that Carl had threatened her life if she informed the police. The officers noted her lack of emotion and how careful she was in giving her testimony. Investigators knew that she seemed pleased about Sydney's death, casting doubt on her innocence. To probe further, the police pretended to know everything about the crime, including Dakota's relevance, but claimed they were unclear about the motive. This unsettled she, yet she did not confess to any wrongdoing. The case garnered public attention. They intensely discussed the shocking crime. Rumors circulated widely, including one claiming that Dakota discovered Sydney's diary a few days before the crime, revealing that Sydney had slept with her boyfriend, Chad, 2 years earlier. It is important to mention that 2 years earlier, Dakota had not met Chad, yet this might have infuriated her as Sydney's older sister. However, the romantic relationship, especially between Sydney and Chad, was never verified and was doubtful to investigators since Sydney was only 13 at the time. Although this motive wasn't confirmed, there were several other possible reasons for the murder. The following day, Dakota was called in for questioning again. She alleged that her boyfriend, Chad, who was accused of the crime, had shown disturbing behavior. He was aggressive and often lost control, attacking people frequently. It seems that he cannot avoid committing a serious crime. He had a conflict with Sydney's ex-boyfriend, Bubby. According to Chad's testimony, he heard voices urging him to attack his family. He even set their house on fire. He also allegedly shot his favorite cat, hitting it with 15 bullets. None of these claims were verified. Detectives also knew that at 10 p.m. on the night of Sydney's disappearance, Dakota called he. It's believed that the group members arrived at her house then, possibly asking Dakota to open the door or planning something before the attack. Dakota did not answer the police's questions about Sydney's murder, and it seems she is deliberately trying to mislead the investigation. As a result, she was arrested for obstruction of justice. However, at that time, the police did not have enough evidence to proceed with a trial. Chad admitted to being the leader of a gang called the City Saints, whose members followed his orders without question. This thing might have endangered Sydney's life. Chad, however, insisted that he never ordered the murder of Sydney and denied any involvement, even expressing regret over the incident. Meanwhile, Carl participated in interrogations for 2 days as the prosecution prepared for the trial. He recounted that on the night of Sydney's disappearance, he had been drinking at night. Then, Robbie, also drunk, came to see him and suggested going somewhere. Carl agreed without asking for details and to feel secure and took a .22 caliber pistol with him. Carl was very emotional during the interrogation and openly cried. This made the detectives question whether he was an accomplice to a terrible murder or no. It was possible that he went for a walk without knowing Robbie planned to kill Sydney. However, the police were skeptical about his tears, as they could be a sign of remorse or a disguise. Carl stated that they picked up James on the way and drove to the Sydney family's house. Robbie climbed over the fence and entered the house while everyone was asleep and Carl waiting outside in the car. After some time, he became worried because they were taking too long. He claimed he went inside to find his friends and leave together. The door from the courtyard was open, providing direct access to the basement where Sydney lived. The police were suspicious that the door might have been unlocked at night, especially since there were no signs of forced entry. It seemed likely that someone helped the criminals approach Sydney unnoticed. Suspicion falls on her sister, Dakota. Carl explained that when they entered the property, they noticed that Sydney had woken up due to the noise. She recognized both criminals, Robbie and James. She asked what they were doing here. Then, she tried to wake her mother and call for help. However, Robbie attacked although she resisted, but they overpowered her. He threw her onto the couch and tied her hands, but she fought back fiercely. He then pointed a gun at her. Likely due to the shock and injuries from the struggle, so she lost consciousness. They were aware of her mental health challenges and her history of running away from home, so they decided to make it look like she had run away again. They removed from the house through the open door, dragged her to their car, and drove off with her to ensure she wouldn't be found. Halfway through the journey, Sydney regained consciousness and began to resist desperately. Immediately after that, one of the attackers forced her to the ground and strangled her. He kept her in that position for a long time, until she passed out again. They then took to a river by car, but she regained consciousness again midway. During this time, they claimed that she expressed a desire for intimacy, and they had had intimate relations with her. And the strangulation may have been part of a perverted game. Subsequently, Sydney was shot in anger and thrown into the water. However, this testimony of incident was met with disbelief. It was obvious that the intimate intercourse was not of her own volition. Robbie presented a different account to the police. He stated that Carl played a significant role in torturing the girl. Carl had previously been in a brief 3-day relationship with she, but then she broke up with him because he didn't care about her, after which she began seeing someone else. Afterward, he vowed to take revenge on all the girls who betrayed him, starting with Sydney. At that time, no one expected his anger to lead things so far. Robbie, the youngest in the group, at just 15, insisted that he hadn't harmed anyone. As a new member, he simply followed the others and did what they told him, staying within the boundaries of what was allowed. On October 5, 2012, Chad's group members disclosed new information about the case. The police finally gathered enough evidence to build a full case and charge the group members. That day, they questioned Dakota to understand how the door to Sydney's room could have been left open at night. It's known that due to her mental illness, she could pose a danger to herself. Her mother ensured that she couldn't leave by keeping the door always locked. Sydney was under house arrest during all of this. It became evident that the incident was neither accidental nor mistaken because her mother and Dakota were meant to supervise every evening. During questioning, the police were able to get Dakota to confess. She admitted she left the door open, intending to play a prank on her sister, coordinated with members of the group. Finally, the police obtained this long-hidden confession. Later, Dakota disclosed another crucial detail. Before the crime, she had a meeting with Chad's team members, where they discussed their plans. She admitted they intended to kill Sydney. With this information, everything became clear. Even if Dakota didn't directly participate in the murder of Sydney, she was aware of it and did nothing to prevent it. She knew what was going to happen, so leaving the door unlocked wasn't accidental. She planned it to allow the attackers to enter the house and killed Sydney. Investigators believe Dakota underwent a brutal ordeal to join Chad's group, which explained her aided the killers. Her cheerful behavior at her younger sister's funeral was because she completed the ritual to join the group and get rid of her annoying younger sister. Then, their group celebrated after the murder. Carl later acknowledged his guilt, writing an apology letter to Sydney's mother, Tracy, on August 18, 2010. He admitted that he had done evil and now had to pay with his freedom. Even though he knew that it couldn't bring Sydney back to life, but he asked for forgiveness. Tracy read the letter and believed Carl showed no remorse. Although he was arrested early in the investigation, it took 2 years for them to appear in court. Carl Dane pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and received the 60-year prison sentence. However, before being transferred to a federal prison, he was discovered dead in his cell, with a note expressing regret for his actions. Another member of the group, James, was also found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years. Robbie Mueller initially sentenced to 37 years, but his sentence was reduced to 26 years after an appeal. He will be eligible for parole in late 2023. The gang leader, Chad Bennett, cooperated with investigators and pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, resulting in a 20-year sentence. He took a plea deal and will be eligible for parole in 2026. Dakota received a 26-year prison sentence, with the ability to apply for first parole by the end of 2023. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Hunt family. In New South Wales, there is a small rural town called Lockhart, located between Sydney and Melbourne, where the central figures of our story lived. With a population of around 800, it was a quiet and close-knit community. Here, we find the farm belonging to the Hunt family, which had 3 children. The head of the family, Jeff Hunt, was 44 years old, and his wife Kim was 3 years younger. They met during their university years, where they were both active and athletic. They were immediately drawn to each other and became inseparable, eventually marrying and aspiring to build a large, loving family. The people of Lockhart held the Hunts in high regard, appreciating them for their kindness, friendliness, and involvement in the community. Kim Hunt had always dreamed of helping people. After finishing school, she enrolled in university to study medicine. Once she graduated, she began working at a hospital as a nurse in the intensive care unit, where she took pride in saving lives. She felt that her dream had finally come true. In her spare time, she enjoyed horseback riding and worked on their family farm, growing rapeseed alongside her brother Alan, continuing the legacy of their parents. At the time of these events, the family was overcoming a difficult period in their lives. Jeff and Kim supported each other, which helped them recognize each other's positive traits. They had 3 children who adored them: Fletcher, the eldest at 10 years old, Mia, who was 8, and Phoebe, the youngest at 6. The family was well respected in their town, partly due to their active involvement in local volunteer work. However, they faced significant challenges. In 2012, Kim and Phoebe, her youngest daughter, were in a serious car accident when Kim lost control, causing the vehicle to roll over twice. While her daughter Phoebe sustained only minor injuries, Kim's condition was much more severe. Doctors fought to save her life, and she spent a long time in a medically induced coma, ultimately miraculously surviving. After this traumatic event, Kim underwent a lengthy recovery process. Initially, doctors believed she might only be suitable as an organ donor and did not expect her to regain a normal life. However, Jeff, her husband, refused to accept this outcome. He dedicated himself to supporting Kim throughout her rehabilitation, believing they could overcome the odds. With his encouragement, Kim gradually learned to walk, eat, talk, and perform daily tasks again. Nonetheless, it was clear that she would never fully return to her previous self. Jeff took on the responsibilities of caring for his children and wife while also working. Although relatives provided some help, it was insufficient. To ease their burden, Jeff hired a nurse for his wife and a housekeeper, which greatly improved their lives. Doctors acknowledged Jeff's significant role in Kim's recovery, but specialists and family members remarked that the accident had fundamentally changed her life and personality. Kim lost her temper easily and experienced frequent mood swings, often directed at Jeff. Despite this, Jeff was patient, fully understanding how challenging her recovery was. Over time, things began to improve. Kim started to walk and move around more, gradually participating in household chores and making an effort not to be a burden. She was used to being independent and self-sufficient, so she aimed to return to her previous life, but found it all quite difficult. Kim was trying to manage the household and care for 3 children, which was challenging for someone recovering from a severe car accident that caused significant brain and spinal cord injuries. This created immense daily stress, which began to affect all aspects of the household, including her relationship with her husband. Jeff was also feeling the strain. In addition to the household challenges, he was facing serious financial issues. Initially, he found it hard to balance supporting his family with the increasing financial pressure. While his wife took care of the home and children, he was also working on the farm, which made it difficult for him to manage everything, particularly the harvest. They were spending a lot on medications, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. During Kim's rehabilitation, Jeff experienced several nervous breakdowns due to the overwhelming stress. Doctors observed a significant improvement in Kim's mental health. Previously, she had expressed to them that she was struggling and often thought about death. Kim felt that it would be easier for everyone if she were to die in an accident, believing it would spare others from having to support her. To prevent any potential tragedy, all firearms were taken from the Hunt family's farm. However, since they were necessary for self-defense and farming, the firearms were quickly returned but kept hidden from Kim. She had been on extended leave from work, which she missed greatly, as it used to bring her joy. What weighed most heavily on her were the children, whom she loved dearly and spent all her time with. In 2013, she began to recover and returned to work as a nurse. Initially, she couldn't work the same way she had before, as she quickly became tired and frequently forgot things. To aid her rehabilitation, she started with a small workload, working no more than 8 hours a week as a junior staff intern. She also resumed volunteering, focusing on topics that were meaningful to her. She spoke about road safety and traumatic brain injuries, sharing her own experiences to connect with others and offer support. By August 2014, the Hunt family felt they were returning to a normal life. Kim's sister, Jenny, visited her to celebrate Phoebe's daughter's 6th birthday. The celebration felt reminiscent of happier times before the tragedy, bringing Jenny joy. It appeared that things had settled down, and they had overcome their struggles. However, Jenny had no idea this would be her last visit with younger sister. On September 8, 2014, Kim took the children to the school bus stop for their usual day at school. In the afternoon, the housekeeper, Lauren, arrived to help with housework. The children's school day went smoothly, and around 3:30 p.m., Kim and the kids returned home. The previous day had been Father's Day, and Jeff was supposed to spend it with the children while Kim rested. Due to her injuries, she often tired quickly and needed a nap. Overall, the day was pleasant until a minor conflict arose between Jeff and their eldest son, 10-year-old Fletcher, over a football game. Jeff, who typically refereed the children's matches, disagreed with Fletcher's actions during the game, leading to tension. Kim comforted Fletcher after the disagreement. Later, Jeff decided to visit his parents on the farm for the holiday without his family. He explained that Kim, the children, and Lauren stayed behind to finish their chores, which is why they did not accompany him. His parents noticed that their son seemed lost that day. He wasn't smiling as he usually did and wasn't communicating much. It was difficult to get him to talk, which was unusual for him since he was normally positive, sociable, and cheerful. However, this time he seemed sad, and they quickly realized something was wrong. They tried to ask Jeff what had happened, but he avoided answering and eventually went home. According to Lauren's testimony, there was a minor conflict between Jeff and Kim that day. It didn't seem serious, but it had upset Jeff, who then went to play golf, leaving his wife with the children. When he returned, he sent the kids to take a shower. Around 7 p.m., they watched a family show on TV before having a snack and going to bed. Kim, still upset from a previous argument. Her frustration stemmed from the fight and his choices, such as giving the children unhealthy food and letting them watch TV, which were against her rules. She also mentioned that one of her husband's brothers had taken money from their family fund to purchase a house and a car. Additionally, she was upset that her husband was giving large amounts of money to his family from the fund from there. Around 7:30 p.m., the house was quiet after the Lauren left. She said goodbye to the family, with the children hugging her, and Jeff called out, "Goodbye, thank you, see you tomorrow." What transpired in the house afterward remains unclear. Later, the Lauren informed the police that the family atmosphere had been tense throughout the day, but she never imagined the horror that unfolded after she left. The Lauren returned to the farm during the day, as she usually did. As she approached the house, she noticed Kim lying on the lawn. She was still in her pajamas. Concerned that Kim had fallen and needed help, Lauren rushed over. However, as she got closer, she saw that Kim was not moving, and her face was covered by 2 jackets. When Lauren removed the jackets, she realized it was too late to help. Kim was dead from a gunshot wound to the head and was lying in a pool of blood. Her body was already cold, and the horrifying scene terrified Lauren. She immediately called emergency services. When the medics arrived, they confirmed that the 41-year-old Kim Hunt was dead. Kim had been shot at close range, with the bullet entering just above her right eye, leaving her with no chance of survival. The medics entered the house and soon found a shell casing on the floor in the hallway, indicating that the murder had occurred there. When police arrived and searched the house, they found Fletcher, Phoebe, and Mia murdered in their bedrooms, all 3 children shot in the head. A note written on a napkin was found on the kitchen table. The note, written in adult handwriting, read, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." But it is unclear who wrote it. Although it is believed that Jeff, the husband, wrote the note, but it was not possible to find him. There are 2 possibilities: the criminals attacked the house, murdered Jeff's family and kidnapped him, or he himself was responsible for the deaths and went into hiding. Ultimately, the case could only be cleared up if Jeff was found. He was therefore declared a wanted man and an active search was launched. There was no evidence of anyone else in the house, no fingerprints or DNA, and no signs of forced entry. News of this tragic event spread quickly throughout the community. People were shocked and frightened, trying to understand what had happened in the Hunt family home that night. Many found it hard to believe that their neighbor, Jeff, could have committed such acts. People were genuinely concerned about his whereabouts and safety, thinking that he could be the next victim of the killers. As a result, the community called for a quick resolution of the case and the arrest of the criminals to restore safety to the area. The police conducted an investigation around the farm for an extended period until they discovered fresh tire tracks the following day. These tracks led them to a small dam located a few hundred meters from the Hunt family home. Divers searching the reservoir, which was about 1.5 meters deep, found the body of Jeff Hunt along with a shotgun. He died of a gunshot wound to the top of the head. And it was apparent that he ended his life by putting the gun in his mouth. An examination showed that his body had been in the water for approximately 30 hours. When experts compared Jeff's handwriting from cards he had previously given to his wife with a note found on the dining table, they confirmed a 100% match. This evidence indicated that he was responsible for the tragic event. It was impossible to completely piece together the events since there were no witnesses. It appears that Jeff coldly murdered his 3 sleeping children and then shot Kim as she tried to flee the house. He likely regretted his actions later and wrote a suicide note, which left him with no way to turn back. Jeff left his family, got into his old car, and drove along a dirt road. After traveling a few hundred meters, he turned into a wheat paddock and headed towards the pond, where the abandoned car. The motive behind the crime was completely unclear. Many local residents held Jeff Hunt in high regard and refused to believe he could be responsible for the violence, despite the clear evidence against him. In the town of Lockhart, he was a respected figure, a farmer, a referee for children's football games, a volunteer, and an active participant in community events. This admiration led to a peculiar reaction among the locals. Some speculated that the weapon may have been in the hands of Kim, who had previously expressed a desire to end her life. Some even called her a witch, claiming that she was responsible for the crimes, accusing her of killing her family due to her mood swings, framing her husband, and then ending her life. This scenario was physically impossible. Jeff was found with a shotgun, while Kim was discovered far from the shell casing where the shots were fired. With the injuries on her body, it was obvious that she couldn't have fired that gun. An examination showed she didn't have the physical ability to shoot a shotgun, as her right side was impaired. Therefore, experts were unanimous that Jeff was the killer. Despite the police conclusively proving that Jeff Hunt had the weapon and was responsible for the deaths of his entire family, some people continued to defend him. Jeff had built such a positive image that many viewed him as a martyr, despite the fact that he had murdered 3 innocent children and his wife, who had already survived a serious car accident. Justifying his actions, regardless of the circumstances, was impossible. The community came together to raise funds and organize a funeral for the victims. Police faced challenges in determining a motive for the crime. Although Jeff was upset that day due to an argument with his son and a conflict with his wife, this was not typical behavior for him. When the Lauren was present, the situation did not escalate. Despite a tense atmosphere in the house, Jeff and Kim generally handled their disputes in a calm and respectful manner, so they maintained their composure. There were no signs indicating the upcoming crisis. The Lauren had never seen Jeff lose his temper, hit his wife and children, or even raise his voice. She never imagined he would resort to violence. As a result, she and others doubted that Jeff could have committed the crime. In contrast, Kim sometimes yelled at her husband and children when she was upset or forgot to take her antidepressants. It was hard to believe that Jeff could have been suffering from deep depression to the point of murdering his family. It would have been difficult to hide such a serious condition from their relatives and the Lauren, who saw them every day. Yet, even she saw no signs that anything tragic was about to happen. Jeff did experience some financial difficulties, but they were manageable and did not stop him from supporting his family or seeking solutions. He was not the type to back down when faced with challenges, especially after carrying the weight of responsibility for many years. Police, gathering evidence over time, determined that the crime was not planned but was instead a spontaneous reaction. This was unusual for Jeff. He had plans for the next day and the upcoming week. Before the Lauren departed, he behaved like a responsible family man and caring father, preparing meals for the children for school and arranging a tennis match with a friend for the weekend. It was revealed that Jeff had been seeing a psychotherapist and had shared that he feared being left alone with the children if Kim were to leave him. Just weeks before her death, Kim told a relative that she was unhappy with Jeff's management of their finances, which often led to money issues. She also admitted that she no longer loved him and felt no attraction, even considering divorce. The tension in their relationship might have intensified, as Kim wanted a divorce and had expressed her desire to separate to Jeff, which could have led to a violent response. The investigation into the incident involved several psychology and psychiatry specialists who provided important insights. One expert, after reviewing the case and speaking with the deceased's relatives, noted that Jeff showed signs of depression, including feelings of sadness and anxiety. Shortly before the shooting, he visited his family looking distressed and remained quiet, suggesting he was hiding something. His family noticed his unusual behavior and tried to understand what was bothering him. In situations like this, it can be challenging to identify the issues, especially since men often avoid discussing their feelings and see asking for help as a sign of weakness. They typically keep their struggles to themselves, which can build up and eventually lead to an emotional outburst, sometimes with tragic consequences. Jeff may have battled his problems for many years while trying to maintain a normal life, hiding his struggles and worsening his situation. Psychologists suggest that he likely wanted to escape due to depression and a deep sense of hopelessness. His use of a firearm to inflict a single fatal injury indicates that he probably did not intend to harm his wife and children. The Lauren reported that Jeff appeared to be under immense pressure from various aspects of his life, including the challenges of caring for his sick wife, Kim, and her changed personality, which may have pushed him to a breaking point. Kim's family also felt that her condition had made life so difficult. Experts believe that Jeff never intended to harm his family. Instead, he was likely overwhelmed by his personal issues and worries, and the stress from the impending divorce may have contributed to his state of mind. However, in a sudden change of thought, he chose to end the lives of everyone around him. He might have convinced himself that as the family's main provider, he was saving them from a future of poverty. In a tragic effort to prevent what he saw as a disastrous outcome, Jeff committed the unimaginable act of killing his family quickly and painlessly, aiming to spare them from suffering. The tragic case of the Hunt family marked one of the bloodiest Father's Days in Australian crime history. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Dickinson family. From the outside, the Dickinson family appeared perfect. They had everything needed for happiness, a loving mother and a devoted father who was willing to do anything for his family's well-being. Although they lived together in a small unit, they harbored many dark secrets that would surprise an outsider. For years, the Dickinson family faced deep-rooted issues that ultimately resulted in brutal murders. This tragic event took place in September 2021. One significant factor that contributed to this horrific outcome was depression, which can be devastating. Today, we will share one of the most heartbreaking stories from the criminal world. Lauren Dickinson, who lived in South Africa. She had a difficult childhood that made it hard for her to connect with teachers and other children. As a result, she often felt isolated and was frequently excluded from holidays and birthday celebrations. This experience contributed to mental health issues that began during her teenage years. Lauren is very anxious and struggles to control her emotions, always seeing threats in everyday situations. Despite her difficulties, she has had a passion for medicine since she was a child. After finishing school, she went to university and eventually became a general practitioner. In the following years, while working, Lauren met Graham, an orthopedic doctor, and they began dating. Despite their different medical specializations, they quickly developed a close bond and fell in love. Graham was outgoing and sociable, which complemented Lauren's more reserved nature. Their relationship seemed harmonious as they balanced each other's weaknesses. With Graham's influence, Lauren became more cheerful and open. They got married in May 2006. At that time, they lived in Pretoria, South Africa, where they built a house on nearly a hectare of land. The house had 4 bedrooms, a gym, a swimming pool. As they started their married life, Lauren shifted her career focus to gynecology and neurological diseases. However, almost from the beginning of her attempts to get pregnant, she decided to put her career on hold to have children. In 2012, Lauren returned to work at the medical center, but she was no longer a practicing physician. Instead, she became a part-time manager and her husband's assistant. The couple faced challenges conceiving due to health issues. Despite these difficulties, they were eager to have children. In 2013, they sought help from fertility specialists. After successful treatment, they welcomed a baby girl named Sarah, but she was born prematurely at 18 weeks. Sadly, Sarah did not survive. The loss was a shock to Lauren, who grieved every day for the next 2 months. The couple continued to consult with fertility specialists but continued to face challenges conceiving. Lauren underwent 17 rounds of IVF, often with low success rates. They eventually decided to use donor eggs and their first daughter, Leanne, was born. The family was very anxious during the pregnancy. Lauren feared another negative outcome and the possibility of losing the baby again. After Leanne was born, Lauren suffered from mental health issues. In 2015, doctors diagnosed her with anxiety, postpartum depression, and major depressive disorder when Leanne was just 18 months old. In response to the situation, Graham took a leave of absence to care for their daughter, and other family members stepped in to help. Following the doctor's advice, Lauren managed her illness with medication. Despite the challenges, the couple remained hopeful about having a second child, and after a few years, Lauren became pregnant again. An ultrasound revealed that she was expecting twins, which excited the parents as their family was set to grow. However, during the examination, they learned that one of the girls had a cleft palate, which caused Lauren significant anxiety. Fortunately, It was later discovered that the condition was not as serious as initially thought, which brought relief to Lauren's family. In 2018, twins Maya and Carla were born earlier than expected when they were in their 5th month. A successful surgery to correct the birth defect was performed. The family handled the ordeal well. After the surgery, Lauren and Graham decided to hire a nanny to help care for the family. The issues surrounding the birth left Lauren feeling anxious and compounded by panic attacks. Her husband Graham described her as an extremely anxious mother, constantly worrying about their children. Lauren was overprotective, often watching their every move, which irritated the kids. Despite these challenges, they managed to overcome many of the difficulties. The Dickinson family was relatively well off, allowing them to hire a maid, gardener, and nanny to help ease the stress on Lauren, who struggled with her mental health. By 2020, the Dickinson family had sold their house and land and moved abroad. They chose to rent a comfortable apartment. This new living situation has significantly improved their family relationships. For the first time in 10 years, Lauren stopped taking antidepressants. By March 2021, she was off all medications and had good mental health. This positive change inspired her to start doing CrossFit at least 3 times a week to stay in shape. In addition, she overcame her eating disorder. This change gave her a more positive outlook on life. Graham noticed positive changes in Lauren and was relieved that she seemed to have overcome her previous health problems. However, their happiness did not last long. By June 2021, Lauren's depression had returned. As a result, Lauren decided to see her psychiatrist again, who prescribed her antidepressants after she described feeling depressed and isolated. The Dickinson family was in a difficult situation. Graham was often home because he did not work, and the children became very attached to him, always wanting him around. As a result, Lauren felt left out and she often argued with her children, who preferred to be with their father. Although they appeared to be a happy family on the surface, things were actually very tense and could explode at any moment. In July 2021, South Africa experienced a series of riots that heightened Lauren's anxiety. The violent protests triggered panic within her family, prompting them to quickly decide to move to New Zealand, which they saw as a quieter and safer place. This move was also strategic, as Graham's parents lived there. However, their hopes were met with numerous challenges. Immigrating under such circumstances carried the risk of being denied a residence permit due to chronic illness or health conditions. To hide her struggles from the authorities, Lauren stopped taking her antidepressants shortly before the move. Her psychiatrist had told her that she was stable and no longer needed medication. Nevertheless, the pressure of the immigration process caused Lauren significant stress, worsened by her insomnia. She was only getting 2 hours of sleep each night because of the increased workload. Before the move, she began taking another medication in August 2021. The Dickinson family left South Africa on August 2nd. Lauren later described the trip as one of the most difficult times of her life, filled with anxiety about their future in New Zealand. Upon arriving in New Zealand, they settled in Timaru, a quiet town of about 30,000. The family's struggles continued. Their living conditions in New Zealand were not much better than in South Africa, with frequent power outages. In addition, Graham had to return to work earlier than expected, adding to the Dickinson family's stress. Graham started working at a hospital in Timaru and started his shift. Lauren hoped that they would have more time to deal with the challenges of moving house and adjusting to a new. Lauren felt overwhelmed with family issues and was left to care for 3 young children on her own without any support. On the appointed day, the Dickinson family went to the immigration office and were selected as potential citizens, while many other families faced rejection. Their application was accepted and they were told to wait for a response. The couple then went to a local Christian school to enroll their child in kindergarten. Graham noticed that during this time, Lauren seemed particularly sad, as if a dark cloud was hanging over her. She seemed far from the cheerful person who shared her life on social media. Even the smallest setback would send her spiraling deeper into depression. During this challenging period, Lauren kept in touch with her new friend Letitia through social media. She attempted to call Letitia, who had recently moved, to invite her to dinner, but her messages went unanswered. Meanwhile, Lauren and her spouse were looking for a rental property, but all the houses within their budget were in poor condition. They were temporarily staying in a house provided by the hospital, which only added to Lauren's stress as she was already feeling overwhelmed. However, on the night of September 14, 2021, Lauren had trouble sleeping. The next day, she had to take Maya and Carla to kindergarten and take Leanne to school. The morning was lively as the children, excited about their early rise and packing, chose their outfits without noticing their Lauren's fatigue. After dropping them off at school, Lauren returned home and lay down to rest. At 10:47 a.m., she received a photo from her kindergarten teacher showing her twins eating lunch at their table. Then Lauren cleaned the house, organizing her belongings because her family had just moved here. After running errands all day, Lauren picked up the girls from daycare and school around 3 p.m. and took them to the playground. Later, at home, Carla threw a tantrum because she missed their dad, who was at work. The other twin, Maya, had recently fallen out of bed and hurt her stitches. The girls cried so much that Lauren felt like a bad mother, trying to comfort them when they ignored her attempts to comfort them. Lauren cooked chicken nuggets for the children, but they were not satisfied with the meal. This led to a breaking point for her. Feeling overwhelmed, Lauren bathed the children and put them to bed around 6 p.m. Although she received several messages from friends in South Africa, she did not have time to reply to all of them. Graham returned home from work, had a quick dinner, and then left for an important meeting at 7 p.m. While he was away, chaos erupted in the house. About 20 minutes after he left, the children began to scream. In an attempt to calm them down, Lauren went to the garage to get some zip ties. Lauren told the children they were going to weave a necklace and placed the zip ties around their necks. No idea what was going on and were happily playing along. However, Leanne was angry with her mother and criticized what she was doing. For Leanne, it was not a game. In a fit of rage, Lauren began suffocating her children with pillows and blankets. She said that she was very sick and would soon die, and that she was killing her children because she was afraid that no one would take care of them. After Lauren believed the children were dead, she attempted to end your life. Lauren cut herself with a knife, but the blade was too dull to cut deeply. Ultimately, she resorted to pills, consuming several large doses of various medications. But these were not enough to end her life. In a moment of confusion, Lauren collapsed on the kitchen floor, lost in her thoughts about her actions. At that moment, Graham came home. He noticed something was wrong with her and asked if she was okay, but she responded in a way he couldn't understand. Sensing something was very wrong, he rushed upstairs to check on the kids. Going up to the room, he hoped everything was okay, but instead, he found the lifeless bodies of his children on the bed. The horrifying reality unfolded before his eyes. In desperation, he sought help. With the help of colleagues at a nearby hospital, he ran out into the street to meet one of them. As he closed the door behind him, the last thing he saw was Lauren lying on the floor with her eyes closed. He didn't know if she was alive, his only concern was his daughters. So he didn't check on Lauren. A friend at the hospital tried to revive the children, but their efforts were in vain. Around 9:40 p.m., neighbors heard a loud noise, which turned out to be a door slamming as Graham rushed outside. Soon after, they heard sobbing and screaming coming from the house. Graham approached the house and admitted that everything was his fault. He was distressed about leaving the children with their mother, who was not mentally stable. Neighbors called emergency services, and the police and ambulance arrived around 10 p.m. Officers discovered the bodies of the murdered children in the house. The twins, Maya and Carla, aged 2, and their 6-year-old, Leanne, had been killed. In the kitchen, police found Lauren alive and conscious. She answered their questions but spoke very softly. The Lauren appeared to be in shock. The police discovered shallow cuts on her hands and forearms. When asked if she had used any illegal drugs that evening, she denied it. Later, police found 9 medication bottles in her trash, along with a package containing hundreds of cable ties. A toxicological examination revealed that her blood did not contain any illegal drugs or alcohol, but it did show high levels of antidepressants, sedatives, and other medications. 40-year-old Lauren was promptly arrested and taken to the hospital for help. The brutal murders of the Dickinson family shocked the local community and then spread throughout New Zealand and South Africa. The nanny who worked for the family was speechless when she heard the news. She struggled to accept that it was true. In an interview, the nanny described Lauren, Graham, and their children as an ideal family, saying that she had never witnessed any arguments or conflicts within their household. The nanny firmly believed that Lauren loved her children deeply. She last saw the children in June 2021, when the Dickinson family was excited about moving to New Zealand. After Lauren was taken into custody, Graham had to return to South Africa because his visa was expiring in December 2021. He later returned to participate in the trial. He communicated with Lauren and found it hard to believe that she had harmed the children. The day after her arrest, Lauren woke up in the hospital. She was in disbelief about her situation and was even more shocked, and the police entered her room and accused her of killing 3 girls. On September 18th, Lauren Dickinson was officially charged with triple murder. Lauren admitted to the crime but stated that she did not want to harm her children. She explained that her actions stemmed from her mental instability and the overwhelming challenges she faced as a mother. Lauren expressed feelings of inadequacy in her parenting, struggling to manage her children, who were often screaming. Eventually, the stress became unbearable for her. She recounted how she killed her children, first Carla, then Leanne, and finally Maya, using pillows and blankets to suffocate them. Although Lauren denied experiencing auditory or visual hallucinations, her lawyer requested a psychiatric evaluation following the preliminary court hearing. During this time, Lauren refused to eat and lost weight, dropping to 47 kilograms. Her physical and mental health issues delayed the case for a month, leading to the rescheduling of the hearing for July 2023, nearly 2 years after the tragic events. In court, Lauren's lawyers sought to focus on her mental health struggles as part of their defense strategy. New Zealand law is very lenient towards those who commit crimes against children, especially in cases of manslaughter, where the offender can receive a suspended sentence. It was important for the defense to show that Lauren's actions were a response to extreme stress, showing that she considered killing her child a form of self-defense. The trial began on July 17, 2023, and lasted 4 weeks. Attorneys have said that Lauren had suffered from years of health problems and struggled with depression. Her mental health struggles led her to consider killing her daughter as a way to deliverance. Tensions had recently escalated between Lauren and her children. They often disobeyed her, which led her to resort to physical punishment and consider sedatives. During the trial, Graham revealed that Lauren had raised concerns about the children's safety on 3 separate occasions, but he had not taken them seriously. Each time he left the house, he felt remorse. In May 2019, Lauren expressed a desire to smother their daughters with pillows. In July 2011, she mentioned wanting to cut their femoral arteries in the bathroom. Despite these alarming statements, they were not considered serious at the time. Lauren has a hard time managing her spoiled twins, expressing her frustration by saying, "Children drive she crazy." They are wild, brazen, and disobedient. She tired of them. She wish I could start over and make different choices. Lauren had to face many difficulties to become a parent, making it difficult for others to believe that she could hurt the children. During the trial, Graham described her difficulties in raising her children. He rarely saw her show affection to her children, and they did not seem to seek her out. This became especially evident when he was home more often and the children clung to him, leaving Lauren without the opportunity to play with them. He sensed something was wrong, but attributed it to her withdrawn personality and inability to participate in fun activities. Graham mentioned that New Zealand did not meet Lauren's expectations. The new country felt completely different from what she had envisioned. This led to a significant cultural shock from everything she encountered. Graham expressed forgiveness towards his wife, believing she was overwhelmed by the challenges she faced. He urged others to forgive her and pray for Lauren. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office aimed to demonstrate that the triple murder was premeditated. They presented evidence showing that the actions were methodical and intentional, including search engine queries. Lauren had repeatedly searched for lethal doses of various medications for children and methods of strangulation. Additionally, she had confided her disturbing plans to family members on several occasions. The prosecutor argued that Lauren was frustrated and angry with her children because she felt unable to manage them and was resentful towards them, believing that the girls negatively impacted her relationship with her husband. Psychiatrists confirmed that Lauren was likely in an unstable mental state at the time of the crime. Experts noted that Lauren was experiencing significant anxiety during this period. On August 14, 2013, the jury began reviewing the evidence in the case, which included hundreds of pages of research reports and documents from police and experts. After initial deliberations, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on Lauren's guilt. They returned to the office to review detailed police footage of the victim's parents, which took more than 15 hours and lasted 2 days. On August 16, after a hearing at Christchurch, Lauren's attorney, Antui, said the best place for Lauren to serve her sentence was in hospital, a placement that all 3 mental health professionals who evaluated her agreed with. Lauren Dickinson will be detained at hospital pending assessment before a sentencing date is finalized. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Kathy Krausnack. On February 19, 1982, police were called to the Krausnack family home, where they discovered the body of 29-year-old Kathy Krausnack. An axe was found embedded in her head, the only fatal wound. Earlier, Kathy's 30-year-old husband, James Krausnack, had run into a neighbor's house while holding their 3-year-old daughter. He was covered in blood and appeared distressed, reporting that his wife showed no signs of life. While crying and agitated, he waited for police to arrive. James told police that he had left for work at Kodak around 6:30 a.m., where he worked as an economist. He spent the day completing routine tasks while his wife, Kathy, and their daughter, Sarah, were still asleep at home. Kathy had planned to spend the day with their daughter. When James returned home around 5 p.m., he noticed the garage door open, the kitchen window broken, and the glass door between the garage and the house shattered. Realizing something was wrong, he went inside and found his wife lying on the bed. He was shocked and momentarily unable to speak. He then noticed his 3-year-old daughter lying next to the bed, unharmed. To ensure her safety, James took his daughter to a neighbor's house. The neighbor opened the door and saw James, who was frightened and crying. At his request, she called 911, asking them to come quickly because he claimed there had been a murder. Police spoke to Sarah, who seemed unaware of what had happened. She said she saw a multicolored bad guy on her parents' bed and saw her mother with blood on her face. It is extremely distressing for a child to be left alone in an apartment with a murdered mother for an entire day. This was a disturbing aspect of the case. Fortunately, Sarah was too young to fully understand the situation, so it did not affect her mental state much. The neighbors did not observe or hear anything unusual. The police investigated the crime scene but did not find any significant evidence or clues. The murder weapon, an axe, was taken from Kathy's family garage. It had been used to cut the grass. Notably, there were no fingerprints on the axe, suggesting that it had been deliberately cleaned. In addition, forensic experts found no fingerprints inside the house, which was puzzling since 3 people lived there and could have touched many objects. The police found this strange and assumed that the perpetrator had cleaned the entire house. However, the police did notice something strange in the kitchen. A damp bathroom rug was drying in the garage. James claimed that he had no idea why the rug was there and that nothing of note had been found on it. In 1982, forensic techniques did not allow for the collection or analysis of DNA. Police suspected that the incident was a botched robbery, theorizing that the attackers may have become frightened and decided to eliminate Kathy, a potential witness. However, some valuables were still intact. Kathy's bag, which had been left in the kitchen, had been emptied onto the floor, but the contents, money, jewelry, and expensive tea sets, were all there and neatly arranged. This raised an important question: why did the criminals leave these items behind? Even the cash that was openly left on the dresser had not been taken. Perhaps the criminal had scared Kathy, but in this case, fingerprints would have been left on these items. Yet, there were none, which was puzzling. This behavior was unusual, and the police noticed these discrepancies, raising suspicions that the crime scene had been staged. Some items were arranged in a way that suggested they were deliberately placed there. A crucial reason for dismissing robbery as a motive was that nothing had been stolen. Seasoned police officers, who regularly dealt with burglaries, immediately recognized that this incident was different. While murders were rare in Brighton, thefts and robberies occurred almost daily. Police believed that Kathy's death was a premeditated murder. The initial suspect was, of course, her husband, who discovered her body. Police began investigating James. James's friends and acquaintances described them as a happy, even idealistic couple. They had both grown up in the same Michigan city. Kathy came from a family of truck drivers, while James's parents owned a successful carpet store. They met in high school and began dating in college, eventually marrying on May 3, 1974. After their marriage, Kathy continued her studies in economics in Colorado, and in 1978, they celebrated the birth of their daughter, Sarah. Meanwhile, James became interested in further education and pursued a doctorate in economics. James then took a teaching position at the University of Lynchburg in Virginia. In 1981, the family relocated to Brighton, New York, where James found a job as an economist. Kathy was a devoted and caring mother to their daughter, always attentive and loving. However, friends noticed a significant change in Kathy's mood 6 months before her death. She became unusually irritable and restless, though they did not know the reasons behind her behavior. As the police investigated the family's situation, they discovered that things were not as perfect as they initially appeared. The couple kept their problems private, never discussing their issues publicly or seeking advice from others, which made it difficult to gather information. However, police found a brochure for marriage counseling in the family car, suggesting that there had been ongoing discord in their relationship. The police also contacted James's employer and learned that he had misrepresented his qualifications, claiming to have a doctorate. This deception led to him being assigned a role he was unqualified for, resulting in stress at work and further complicating his situation. James's cooperation helped the police gather information, and James agreed to attend the next meeting for questioning, but he did not attend. Less than 24 hours after the murder, he left the city without informing the police. This action of his made the police suspicious. He was intentionally fleeing. Police later discovered that James had gone to his parents' home in Michigan. They found him again and questioned him. He cooperated with the police by providing blood and hair samples for analysis. Unfortunately, DNA testing was not available at the time, so this did not yield any useful results. 10 days after Kathy was found dead in her bed, James hired a lawyer. The police did not have enough evidence to bring any charges in 1982. Police focused on information that James had left for work at 6:30 a.m. It was important to verify this detail and determine whether he could have been home at the time of the murder. Forensic examinations showed that Kathy had died in her sleep between 4:30 and 7:30 a.m., meaning she could have been murdered with an axe shortly after James left for work. While it was possible that the husband had committed the crime before leaving, it was difficult to understand why he would do so and then go to work, leaving their 3-year-old daughter behind. The mother's body remained in the house throughout the day. The investigation stalled. The evidence collected and the documents found did not shed light on the events of that morning. The James had no clear motive, making a jury trial unlikely. If the prosecution lost, they would not be able to bring new charges against him. In 1997, James met his old friend Sharon at a trade show. Their relationship quickly blossomed, and James asked her out, which she accepted. Sharon noticed that James was still deeply affected by his past loss. He seemed shocked by the traumatic event. James shared the basics of that terrible day with Sharon but avoided going into detail, and Sharon did not want to press him for more information. Their mutual understanding helped strengthen their relationship, and they later married. In 1999, they moved to another city, then moved across the country. At the same time, police continued their efforts on Kathy's case. New police re-examined the evidence, leading to the analysis of a large number of items related to the case. The police were committed to finding justice for the woman who had been so brutally murdered. In 2015, the FBI assisted Brighton police in their investigation, which led them to focus on a suspect, Kathy's husband, James. On April 16, 2016, 34 years after the murder, police made a surprise visit to James's home, hoping to meet him and possibly uncover inconsistencies in his previous statements. However, their plan did not go as planned. James appeared calm and welcoming. He chatted with the officers, agreed to have the conversation recorded, and did not request an attorney. They talked for an hour at the kitchen table, but James remained calm throughout the conversation. Eventually, one of the police asked him directly if he had anything to do with his wife's death. James was angry, said that he would never hurt his wife. Sharon defended him, saying that in all the time they were together, she had never witnessed any aggressive behavior from him. He was a caring and loving husband who would never lay a hand on her. She firmly believed that he was incapable of such cruelty. Sharon also participated in the police interrogation. Throughout the interrogation, she never doubted her husband's innocence. She felt that she had seen his sincere heart and kind nature over the years. Although her views seemed naive, she held these beliefs deeply. She never asked about the fate of James' ex-wife, as she was satisfied with the brief explanation he gave at the beginning of their relationship and never mentioned it again. Police found themselves at a dead end once again, prompting the decision to review all the evidence collected for DNA testing nearly 40 years after the crime. The murder weapon, an axe found in the victim's head, was sent to the FBI for analysis. Unfortunately, they were unable to locate any usable DNA on it because it had been tampered with. This was a significant setback. The police then sought to determine when the crime had occurred. One of the United States' leading forensic experts, Michael Baden, analyzed all the available information about the body. He concluded that the woman had likely died around 3:30 a.m., based on her body temperature and the amount of undigested food in her stomach. Therefore, when James arrived at work at 6:30 a.m., he would have definitely noticed that something was wrong. Police were skeptical of the idea of a botched robbery because nothing was taken. They questioned why the robbers would kill a woman who was sleeping and did not witness the robbery. This conflict led to the filing of murder charges. On November 8, 2019, James was arrested after being charged, but the 67-year-old did not confess to the crime. Police used the time of death to investigate a murder that had occurred 40 years earlier. They found evidence that a robbery had been staged. With this information, law enforcement and James presented their case to the jury, focusing on James' alleged involvement in the murder of Kathy Krausnack, his first wife. During the police, investigators discovered a dangerous criminal named Edla Rabbi, who lived about a mile and a half from Kathy's home in 1982. Rabbi was notorious for his harmful taste in women. Despite being arrested several times, Rabbi often received light sentences and served a total of more than 32 years in prison before his death in 2014. He confessed to killing Kathy but gave many inaccurate details, leading to skepticism about his claims. After each time in custody, he hunted for new victims, torturing them. His first confirmed murder occurred in 1991 when he strangled a 27-year-old woman named Stephanie Kupczynski. Although he confessed to the crime in 2012, he maintained that he had no intention of killing her and that the situation had spiraled out of control. Shortly before Kathy's murder, Rabbi had been released from prison in the 1980s. He was questioned and the investigation began but was not considered a likely suspect. Police questioned him briefly and then released him. As a result, James's lawyers claimed the police were negligent. Instead of pursuing the real killer, they chose to blame the grieving husband, James, who they considered the prime suspect. This situation had a significant impact on society. It was revealed that not only was the criminal dead by the time the case was revisited, but the police who investigated it in the 1980s were also deceased, meaning they could not be held accountable for any mistakes. During the original police, the police had only spoken to the murderer once and then disregarded him entirely. Since Edla Rabbi had passed away, he could not be questioned to clarify his role in the case. Nevertheless, many involved in the investigation still questioned whether he was connected to Kathy's murder. Although he confessed to killing Kathy before his death, numerous inconsistencies arose in his account, particularly regarding the handwriting, which did not resemble his at all. This conclusion was reached by all the experts who examined his case. First, he had a history of rape rather than robbery, yet no signs of sexual assault were found. Additionally, the murder weapon, an axe, was not typical of his methods, and the handwriting was evidently different. As a result, police did not consider him a suspect. Years ago, the prosecution was leaning towards the theory that Kathy's husband was her killer rather than a nearby maniac. During the trial, the prosecutor presented the time of death as crucial evidence. However, several defense experts disagreed with the assertion that Kathy died early, with most believing it occurred before 6:30 in the morning. It is believed that Kathy died at 6:30 a.m. after her husband left for work. The investigation was complicated by the fact that Kathy was under an electric blanket, and it was unclear whether it was on or off at the time of her death. If it was on, the temperature it reached was unknown. Experts attempted to estimate the time of death by analyzing the drop in body temperature. Ultimately, there is no reliable method for determining the exact time of death. Experts have differed, resulting in a margin of error of several hours. Another piece of evidence cited by the police was a shoe imprint found pressing down on a garbage bag at the crime scene. This imprint resembled the shoes worn by Kathy's husband, who was absent at the time of her death. However, this evidence alone was not enough to establish his guilt. The prosecutor argued that the husband was the only possible suspect because he had a motive stemming from family issues. After lengthy deliberations at the hearing, the verdict was announced in court. The jury were unanimous in only one opinion. that the crime was too confusing and contradictory, and the evidence too dubious and easily dismissed. Despite this, James Krausnack was convicted of second-degree murder in November 2022 and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The verdict came as a shock to many, especially to those close to James who knew him well. They had remained certain that James was not guilty because there was no serious evidence of his involvement. James himself also asserted his innocence.